It's loading all the platforms.
Loading all the platforms, so we don't have a picture yet.
No. Do you see the link?
Oh, you gave me a new link?
I didn't give you a new link. I loaded it. That's the only thing I can do.
Oh, okay. I will find it myself over here.
Well, hopefully somebody out there is
Crazy shit.
willing to still watch.
Well, we had this past Tuesday. They had an attack on Rumble, and we lost. I was broadcasting through Rumble's app. Rumble quit broadcasting, and yet we were still streaming to Facebook, X, Twitch, and so Facebook, X, Twitch, and
Rumble?
no, the Rumble. I'm using the Rumble app, and the Rumble app's the one that quit.
Oh.
It was the weirdest shit. I was like, how can you quit? How can the service that I'm using quit and yet have the rest, the stuff it's streaming to work? Come on, computer. There we go. Okay.
There we go. We are up and running, everybody. We are back.
We're back.
We made it through a tornado.
We made it through.
Yeah,
and Ryan was getting into a huge rant. And then I had to cut him. I was like, I'm listening, and I'm like, dude, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm trying to troubleshoot everything. So I tried to use the laptop. That didn't. It said it was sending it, but it didn't send it. But apparently, once we died on that computer, it shut it down. So anyways, we'll wait for people are starting to populate. I can see the view counts going back up. So Ryan,
Good.
You were starting to get into, you were getting kicked out of the state police thing. You got kicked off, or you were having trouble getting into you forego the island, right? Because they wouldn't, they're requiring you to be vaccinated and a bunch of other bullshit. So you're fast forwarding and you're running. What's the timeline for you? And you're running, and all of a sudden it starts to emerge that you were at January 6th, and they turn this into a political witch hunt, trying to find, the old mantra that they would have in, I think it was New York specifically, find me the man, get me the man, and I'll find the crime.
Sure.
That dynamic.
Yeah.
And I probably should turn my microphone on so that people can hear me rather than talking loudly into your guys' microphone.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want to get to that. And then you were starting to go on an epic rant of what was happening at January 6th. And I want to dive into that because you're just witnessing all that. And I had a few friends directly that were there. And I'm like, they were like, something's going on. We need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So that type of stuff. Continue with, or wherever you want to start back, rewind yourself about 6 to 10 minutes. And tell me what you think.
Where were we at, Larry?
You told me about the cigar bar and meeting a couple people there.
Yeah.
There was something that tied in with the cigar bar that led you into talking directly about being at January 6th.
It's things like the cigar bar that added to my popularity statewide.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And
you were leading at that point. You said you were leading in the polls. Most likely, that's what it was. Most likely to win.
January 9th.
Yeah.
Not January 9th, June 9th.
June 9th. That's what it was.
Yep.
June 9th was
June 9th,
yeah.
2022. So
Yeah.
the FBI had been watching me since January 6th, 2021.
Okay.
Right? Or soon after that, whenever it was, suspected that I was there, right?
You were a dangerous criminal.
Right. And they waited that long for,
Yeah, I typically,
dangerous criminal, but if they're that dangerous, right? Anyway,
somebody breaks in or steals something from me, I'm going to wait a couple years.
Right, exactly.
Why wouldn't I? I mean,
so, it was that week that I was arrested that, call it credible polls, whatever, polls aren't credible, but nonetheless, they're indicating factors in a political race.
Okay.
And it starts coming out that I'm leading the polls. I'm the front runner.
Right.
In the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just one, multiple polls, lots of other, anecdotal evidence and, me showing up all over the place. Right. I mean, that word got around too.
Yeah.
People knew that, that's what I was doing. And so they wanted to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of my voters.
Of course.
In any voters, whoever's going to vote in the primary, they wanted to plant seeds of doubt because at the time, what was happening, right? All these people were being arrested for January 6th, and it was made to be like this, oh, it's this horrible thing, and people were being put in prison for long periods of time, and
no matter how invalid it was, no matter how much bullshit there was involved, once you sentence somebody to prison, they gain some level of credibility or validity that there was something there. Once somebody's put in handcuffs and marched off, marched into a jail cell, they have some validity. No matter how big of a kangaroo they had kicking that cord around, it has some validity the minute they put somebody in jail, and that's what
many, right? That's the thing.
1,500 plus.
And like a third to a half almost did some sort of jail time, and many of them got sent to prison like I did.
Yeah.
So, they wanted to plant the seeds of doubt, what's going to happen to Ryan,
Yeah.
And people didn't understand, what was it? Was it a misdemeanor? Was it a felony? They didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
And so that's really what the reason I was arrested for, right? Trespassing, right? Mm-hmm. But it was because, just like the reason they wanted to kick me out of the Women in Law Enforcement event, they wanted to kick me out of the governor race. Because here's a guy like me that, not really a political history, right? Not really this big name. I don't have, $10 billion. And then I make my way by working and connecting with people.
What you're supposed to do.
Right. Go shake hands. Go
if
meet
I'm going to be
people,
your ultimate,
in the eye.
If I'm going to be your ultimate representative on the state level, then I should know my people.
100%. And that's what I was doing. And that's what they knew.
Yeah.
And so they needed to get rid of me. And that was one of the tactics to do it, because it threw the whole thing into and it solidified a lot of support for me too. Right.
Yeah.
But it also made a lot of other people they're not necessarily paying that huge of attention to what's going on. And they just, I really don't want Whitmer, and so anyways.
That's a long hit and rumble. If anybody can hear it that was huge.
That's good.
That's still rolling.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with bioengineering the atmosphere.
And you know what? They might have heard I was going to be here today, and
I'm telling you what, dude. I'm telling you what.
Right?
Some of I'm amazed. I'm like, you know what? Make a decision to go hardcore with the podcast, with music, and you immediately hit these roadblocks to see if you're going to push forward. And that's some of the stuff you're talking about. Is
100%.
They're trying to throw up as much opposition to see if they can stop you, because we are far more powerful than they are. The demonic forces out there, the opposition to freedom and liberty and true conservative values, however you want to chalk that up, whatever that may be, but that true existence. You said it when we were off the air that, if we get hit with if tornado comes in and everything like that, maybe we got to jump out, if the roof takes off. But then the reality is, if it did take us out, we know where we're going.
Yeah, you can show them on Messenger. I sent you a
screenshot of the. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are seeing the storm. You got people at home taking cover. But anyways, that's my whole point, was that they're trying to shut you down. They're trying to, and then I see this atmospheric resistance from time to time where I go, what in the world is going on? Something in the atmosphere is trying to oppose getting this message out. And just sitting with you during dinner and now, dude, you are who I want in a political office, because you're the genuine article. You're the person that actually wants to sit down at a cigar bar and talk with people and really find out what is going on in their lives. And you've run your own business. And so it's something that you're tangible with it. No matter how high we put Trump up there and look at it, we realize this man was on job sites constantly. He's building things. He's doing all sorts of stuff. And then you find out the behind the scenes stuff where he's going into his office areas and he's just handing out money for Christmas bonuses. He's showing double bonuses to certain people that he knows really need it. He's paying off mortgages of guys who stop and fix a tire on his limo, when he's stuck on the side of the freeway.
Real stuff,
real connection with real people. So continue.
And that's what makes the difference. And that's the reason that I was arrested there, right? Mm-hmm. You call it the trespassing was the charge, but that wasn't the reason.
No,
right?
You were a threat to the system.
Right. And you know, I had the original Doge idea. If you looked at the 100-day plan that I had, part of it was identifying areas of fraud and waste in the budget. I was going to appoint a special auditor.
Okay.
Right? I had my 100-day plan that I put out.
Yep.
And within the first 60 days, we're appointing a special auditor.
Okay.
Kind of like what Elon Musk is doing, right?
Absolutely.
And it's going to go through the
big
budget.
balls. Is that big balls?
Big balls, yeah. And find the areas of fraud and waste and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I had the whole Doge back in 2021, 2022, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, that whole thing happens, right? And you know, then I go through that whole debacle.
Of course.
And you know, January 6th, you know, I was talking a little bit about that too. I think we kind of segued over into that a little bit.
Well, I want to get into that because you started to get into just the dynamics in the atmosphere. Okay, so set the stage. Where are you at? You're there for January 6th. Why did you go? And then where did you end up? Because we had Jeremy Rogers was here last week or 2 weeks ago. And we talked about, we even pulled up the map of where he was at on the mall and in the areas and what they were doing and just trying to find a place to go to the bathroom and some things like that. But why did you want to go, Ryan? What was the
We
impetus?
do have a tornado on the ground in Livingston County.
Oh,
Where?
Which side of the county?
Yeah, which
They're
side
not-
of us?
Yeah, they're not saying.
They're not saying. Well, it's
kind of
getting
pertinent
awfully
information
calm
there.
out there.
It is getting
The
calm.
calm before the storm.
I'll tell you what, yeah.
Kent
Yeah.
County had a tornado on the ground an hour ago.
Really?
We had one run down Center Road, 10 years ago? Remember that one
You
that
had
went
one-
down Center Road
yeah.
towards
We just had one here 2
middle of
years
Fenton?
ago, right down on 96 and
Yeah.
in Stockbridge down.
Yeah.
Down there.
is your mic on? Or is it tipped? Put it, Larry, clip it to the fold. Bring it up about 3 inches and clip it to the fold. Don't clip it to the edge, clip it to the fold. Ryan, are you really strict? I know a lot of guys smoking cigars are very strict and will only use wooden matches.
That's the best way to do it. I'll use a torch sometimes if I absolutely have to.
You have used a
Using
specific-
regular lighter.
Because of the fuel and it changes the taste.
Oh,
It changes.
does it really?
Yeah. I'm
Um,
going to text my wife just to make sure she's all good over there
Right.
too, because I live in Kent County.
okay.
Kent
Larry, you
County's a
back
real
on?
big county too over there. So wooden matches is the way to go though.
Yeah.
You know, it's the flavor, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, torch is okay if that's what's available, but
Is there any specific fuel that you use in the torch? There's like 3 different fuel.
butane.
Just the straight butane. Yeah.
Yep.
But with the wooden match, you just get the sulfur and a little bit of what's the other element in there? The sulfur, and there's another element in the wooden matches in the start of the flame, and so you get a little residual hint of that. But once do you wait for it to get into the wood
Yeah.
before you light?
Go
yeah.
let it all burn off and then do the little.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
I know there's a lot of guys, a lot of my buddies they're pretty. And when I was doing it, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm want to be a little bit more. You don't want to be. What do you say? You don't want to be elitist about it, but at the same time, when I see somebody pull out a pack, I go, yeah, you know what you're doing. And so you
Smoke a few cigars.
for a few people out there that don't know cigars, you don't inhale, right?
No.
You keep it in your mouth. You're doing it for the taste of it.
That's it.
And so I've seen a few people that never smoke cigars, and they're all of a sudden,
If you inhale,
They're
you
trying
get
to inhale.
Sick.
and you're like, what are you
gonna be
doing?
Laying off on the side somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't inhale.
It's not like a cigar or a
It's not a
pipe.
cigarette. It's not a pipe.
Yeah.
None of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't want to inhale.
It's a totally, so it's really, it's like, so you don't drink, but it's like, it's a flavor dynamic in your mouth.
Yeah.
What's this particular one you're doing? Is this I can't read the label from here.
Yeah.
Is it a-
Macaduno? It's
Oh.
a coffee flavored one.
Nice. Specific
Yeah.
flavor coffee or just,
it just says handmade coffee flavor. This
Okay.
is a really good one right here. Let's talk about why I don't drink for a second.
Okay,
right?
let's do that.
We're gonna
Then we'll come back to
rewind
January.
back.
Let's come back to
then we
January
come-
6th in a
Yeah, we'll
minute.
give a little, we'll let the listeners wonder what's going to be said next, right? Build a little anticipation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I used to drink a lot.
Okay.
And, I would like Crown Royal, Jack Daniels.
Okay.
Loved Crown Royal. That was my main thing.
Okay.
Right.
I'm a Crown Royal apple guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that came out not too long ago, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't back in the day. Back in the day, it was just the purple bag, just the regular stuff. I was old school before they had all the other fancy things.
I remember being a little kid and having my marbles.
Yeah.
In the Crown Royal bag.
Yep. Oh yeah. The little purple bag. Comes
I gotta
with
have
everyone.
it. Yeah. I had it. Yeah.
So, I would drink that, I liked wine and all that kind of stuff. And I never was really, for me, I was never like an angry drunk or anything like that.
Right.
I kept my cool, and I would just,
right.
You fall asleep or whatever, you just get stupid,
Right.
But there was a time, and it was especially around my marriage too, right? When I was getting married, I just kind of looked at where I was at and what I was doing, and I drank a lot, like every day, right? And I just said,
So you weren't quite an alcoholic, but you were definitely habitual.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if like all of a sudden, like I had to do X, Y, Z, and for the next week or whatever, I couldn't be around it. That was totally fine too. So it wasn't like
that's what I mean by habitual.
Yep.
It was a habit, but if you needed to break your habit because something more important, you could do it.
Yep,
yeah,
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
It's even like that with cigars. I love cigars, but hey, if I don't smoke cigars for 2 weeks, 4 months, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right.
Right.
But I looked at it and I said, what am I getting out of this? I asked myself that question, right? What am I getting out
What's
of
the benefit?
this, right? And then I looked at my marriage too, because, Tabitha and I, she was drinking too. And we just, she was not an angry drunk, but she couldn't handle it quite as well as I could, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't want that to disrupt anything in our marriage.
Right.
To me, that was more important than alcohol or really anything else, right? To make sure that's good. Relationship with God, number one.
Yep.
Then the relationship that I have with my wife is number two.
Yeah.
Then my kids are number three. And interesting enough, too, Jeremy, like we let our kids know that.
Yeah.
That mom and I, right? Our relationship is more important than the relationship that we have with you kids, right? And it doesn't mean that we don't love you, obviously. It doesn't mean that we're not here. We're not going to take care of you and anything like that.
Right.
But we want our kids to know, too, that when they go and find their spouses, right, that needs to be the number one thing, too, because a strong marriage can help to raise strong children. Now, it's not a one-size-fits-all type thing, right? But look at what happened in the black community, what the Democrats did, destroying it, taking fathers out of the homes. How did that work out, right?
Yeah.
So, not that we have to go there, but it's important enough that we just said we're not going to drink at all.
Right.
And that was, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, something like that.
But it's a conscious decision for the health of your marriage and the health of your family.
And me too. Like I looked at it and I said, okay, if I keep drinking like this much, like, what's that going to do to my health as time goes on? Right.
Yeah.
So I just,
was there a bit of, was it beyond, you talked about just being able to quit. And I know I've got majority of my friends that, like I got a couple buddies that are pilot. One of my buddies is a pilot, and other buddies, and I go, we look over at him in the locker room after hockey and, what, you got to fly tomorrow? We know he's got to fly. He's not going to drink.
Right.
But if he's doesn't have to fly, there might be a phone call to his wife to come pick him up from the bar that we're at, because he's been doing a few more than us. And we're like, dude, you better slow down. And then we find out the next day that, I had to have my wife come pick me up. I stayed another hour and a half after you guys left. And we're like, dude, but so there's those disciplines. So was there, with you and your wife, was there more of a social or more of, like I said, habitual, to where it was an automatic thing if there wasn't something more important?
Pretty much.
Because I find that's where kind of the line draws is I'll walk down here, and if there's nobody hanging out, with me, I look over and I go, do I want to have a Di-Serrano, or do I? And a lot of times it's just not, socially it's not something. But if there's a whole group of people here,
sure.
We know alcohol is a depressant, not makes you depressed. You're either a depressed person or a happy person, but it depresses you. And being a very hyperactive person myself, when there's a whole lot of people
Have another drink, Chair.
having a drink,
Took a sip.
having a drink it calms me down and kind of lowers me. Whereas like some, a lot of my guys, smoke joints. Well, I can't do that with a singing voice before the show, obviously. And then later on afterwards, I'm like, dude, it's all going to do is put me to sleep. Whereas this, I can moderate. I can meter it out. But if you're doing it when it's not social and you're doing it habitually, now you're just, we're just doing this out of habit and comfort, and it does feel good. But at the same time, we're not, the reason I bring that up is G.K. Chesterton, this is 110, 120 years ago, wrote a beautiful essay on this. And in the essay, he says, back then they used alcohol a lot for medicinal purposes. Yes. And he said, look, use alcohol for this, use alcohol for that. He said, but if you need alcohol to feel normal, you're the last person that you shouldn't be having it.
Right.
But if you don't need it to feel normal and you do enjoy it and you feel extra normal, then you're the one who should be enjoying spirits. He's calling them spirits back then. And so there's that dynamic. So I want to break that down for a lot of people because we do drink on the show and we want to let people know, when I have somebody like you Larry, if Larry doesn't have to drive home, I've been over to Larry's and he's Larry can drink, but you got to make those conscious choices. And we all have vices. We all have things that we enjoy. We all have things that I was thinking about it before the show, and I'll finish up before we go. What? I'm trying to flip it, Larry. It's not coming up. I'd like to go to the super shot. No, I want to bring it up to people. I haven't, listen, everybody out there. Yeah. I have not been able to go to that shot because I'm upside down right now and I can't get the controllers. I already restarted this thing. And so the storm kind of is messing with us. Anyways, I had a minister that I was connected with through Detroit, and I was down there on a regular basis preaching in various black churches. Love the people down there. They're awesome people. And one of the bishops that I was connected with, beautiful man, loved him, didn't go overboard like a lot of people do about railing against alcohol or even smoking cigarettes, stuff like that. But he did mention it every once in a while. And then I would talk with him afterwards and I go, Bishop, you got 6 kids from 4 different women. So you may not like alcohol, but you got a vice and it's called hot chicks. And the amount of chicks that you've slept with is way beyond the amount of kids that you have.
Sounds like my father. And
you've been in ministry the whole time. Yeah. This is not pre-ministry. This is him confessing to me that, I would preach a revival service and then go hit the strip club. And I'm like, what? Dude, okay, I'll settle for having a Di-Serono after service. Yeah, right. Anyways, so that's my whole point is breaking this down for a lot of people in the journey. It's not just cut and dried and simple stuff. And we've got to understand vices, and they don't teach us balance in life. They don't teach us moderation. And you brought it up earlier. It made me think of the scripture where Paul says, all things are permissible, but not everything's beneficial. Mm-hmm. I won't be mastered by anything.
That's it right there.
And so you and your wife chose to not be mastered by anything.
Right.
And that's powerful, especially in a leadership, because that means you're not subjected. If you do, again, decide to run for office, the Lord impresses upon you to do that, you're not going to be one of those people that are susceptible because of your vices to manipulation or straight up blackmail. And we've got, I'd say the vast majority, other than I would call them the Trumpian grassroots people, the vast majority of the rest of them their vices are to a level that they've already been compromised or are subject to being compromised.
Just out of curiosity, what kept you out of the Capitol? You were there. You could have walked right in. The cops opened the door for you. What kept you out?
It's a great question. We'll get into that in just a minute when we talk about January 6th. I was going to tell you another story here. That threw me off now. What was the story?
Well, we were talking about stopping drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was that it along that lines? We'll come back.
It was. Yeah. Maybe it'll come back to me, right?
Larry will do that.
He was, yeah.
He'll interrupt you and you go,
it was a good interruption. I mean, it was a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I've known the guy for a long time, and he's got good sense. He always has.
Absolutely.
And, I believe he got that he was targeted. I mean, it's
100%.
my
100%.
opinion is he was targeted. They made an example of him.
Yeah.
Right. And it was political.
100%
And
political.
there was nothing. This is misdemeanor stuff.
It's
Right.
stupid.
What should have happened was if they were really serious about pressing charges against all the people that stood on the steps, you're talking $100 fine and go home.
Well,
Right.
You're not
and here,
talking. This guy got 60 days in jail.
60 days in jail, federal
Federal
prison. It's not like it's 60 days in jail. Like you slap somebody in the street and the sheriff decides that you need to spend a little time for you know what I'm saying? Something
Yeah.
stupid like that. This is 60 days in a federal prison. This is not a small process. It's not a simple, the amount of, I had one of my buddies was in federal prison for almost 8.5 years. Okay. This is not a lightweight thing to put you into the federal prison system.
Right.
This is for you being in there 60 days. There's probably a year's worth of paperwork, if not 2 years worth of paperwork, just to process you in and out.
Right.
To do all of that, to close you out, to do all this stuff. You said you received your pardon, and 3 days later you'd have been
Done with supervised release.
yeah. So it's like this is not a light and transitory thing of being in a drunk tank and spending a weekend in jail because you got a little bit crazy, and then they years ago they go, did you learn your lesson? You spent a weekend in the drunk tank. You're gonna either get a ride or sober up, and they go, yes, Your Honor, and they go, okay. Nowadays you get over 0.08 and you're 10 grand off the top, just off the top.
Mine cost him more than 10 grand.
Well, I'm saying it's off the top,
Plus,
just
they took
immediate.
his license for 5 years. He couldn't work.
It's amazing.
Yeah, CDL
And there
Class A truck driver.
And
So
there
they
is
took his
accountability
license
on
for
that.
5 years.
I've had kids in my youth group years ago. They were Tisha was here last week or on Tuesday. One of her friends, Trisha, she was killed by a drunk driver, but that was a failure of the system. She had already been charged for other drunk driving offenses. She had her 2 little kids in the car, and she T-boned our friend and killed her instantly. So this is there. So I'm on both sides of the drunk driving dynamic, and I think that you hurt somebody being irresponsible, maximum penalty. You don't hurt anybody. I don't want anybody out there drinking, but at the same time, it's kind of that no harm, no foul, right? We've all rode through a stop sign and nobody got hurt. And yet you get a ticket for it and you go, what the hell is this? You take it up to that scale. Whereas again, this gal had vehicular homicide, killed somebody, took their life a month before they were getting married for the first time. I think she was 20 years old, just this beautiful, glowing person, Christian girl, married. They were waiting for marriage, all that dynamic. She was heading home from continuing to plan their wedding, and she's being a good Christian, waiting for marriage. She's driving home to her place, not the apartment that they had already gotten together, that they would move into immediately after getting married. She's T-boned, and the gal who hit her, who had multiple things already on her record, gets 4 years. I watched the family petition year after year to keep her in prison. It was a 4-year minimum. She got a certain amount, but it was 4-year minimum where she could. It's ridiculous. So I've fallen on all these dynamics of this and looked at all these parameters, and I go, it comes down to personal responsibility. And that's what I love about what you're sharing with you and your wife. You came to a place of personal responsibility and said, you know what, this for us, this is not our choice. It's not something that's healthy for us. It's become habitual instead of being something that we choose to enjoy from time to time. This is something where we're just automatically doing it unless there's something more important that supersedes it.
One thing that we teach our kids, you brought up like in moderation, I'm talking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 4 cardinal virtues.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the 4 cardinal virtues, which is prudence,
yep,
temperance, justice,
and mercy, right? No? Do you want me to look it up?
Temperance, fortitude,
yes,
and justice. So if you, and I teach my kids this stuff all the time, right? We talk about this kind of stuff because if you talk about mastering yourself,
mm-hmm,
right? And none of us ever really master ourselves.
No, it's always a work in progress.
Exactly, right? I mean, I'm, like I tell people, like I'm really good at juggling things, but I'm kind of a clown, right?
Right.
And in that aspect, I mean, I have a lot of work to do on myself, right? And
Did we say it? You said it. I think you said it correctly. Prudence,
temperance, justice, and
justice.
fortitude.
Yeah. Yep. You got it right.
So if you can just look at those 4 things
Mhm.
and work on those, everything else falls in line, right? I was just talking yesterday to my son about temperance. And he's like, well, what is, let's talk to me about what temperance is again, because we were at a birthday party for my dad, and there was cake there and ice cream. We started talking about different things and doing things in moderation. And it's like, well, if you have, a whole cake, maybe you don't eat the whole cake. Maybe you have just a little bit of the cake and you save some for later, or you give someone to someone else, because then you can get into charity and generosity and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can look at those 4 cardinal virtues and say, in my life, I want to work on all of these things being the best that they possibly can.
Right.
Everything else falls in line.
It does.
Everything else falls in line, right?
Yeah.
Because anything that doesn't fall in line leans right back onto the fortitude. It leans right back to, you have some adversity, you better learn how to handle it, right?
Yeah.
So while you're being prudent, while you're being temperate, while you have justice in the way you treat other people, things are going to go wrong, right? And that's where fortitude kicks in to say, hey, figure out how to get better from this.
Yeah.
Figure out how to get stronger from this. So
I say it all the time on the ice with the hockey guys. They'll being a goalie, you're going to get scored on. And they'll go, oh man, that's my bad. I did that. Or 9 times out of 10, it'll be if I make a really good save and they messed up their assignment. They didn't. They go, sorry man, that was my bad. You shouldn't even have taken a shot. And I go, did we learn from it? What did we learn?
Right.
Instead of screaming at them, you piece of garbage. How come you can't cover your man? Stuff like that. That's not productive.
Not at all.
What's productive is, did you learn from it?
Right.
What did we learn? Did we grow from that? Did we learn a lesson? All right, let's not do it again.
Right.
Because that hurt the shot. Sometimes they do.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Dude,
yeah.
I come home with bruises every once in a while.
Yeah.
And these are my friends that are shooting at me. So, yeah.
So speaking of bruises, when I was arrested, there was a guy that lives just north of Grand Rapids who I didn't know who he was at the time, reaches out to me and says, hey, with all this happening, do you want to have a police dog? And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. So he's like, yeah, we have a Belgian Malinois.
This was after you got arrested?
Yeah.
So he's asking you if you've some personal protection at your home. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
If we wanted to get a dog.
Okay.
And so he's like, we had this Belgian Malinois at the time. She was like 6 years old, something like that. And he's like, this dog is incredible. Right.
Okay.
And, why don't you come check her out? So we go there, my wife and I, to go check out this dog. Her name's Kita. And, we meet the guy and talk to him and all that stuff. And he shows us what Kita can do.
Okay.
He starts giving her these commands and all that stuff. And
is it in English or German?
it's in Dutch.
Oh, in Dutch.
Yeah.
That's the other big language.
Yep.
Dutch and German are the 2 big languages
for
trainers that I've seen.
Man, she's good, and she bites hard.
Oh, yeah?
Bites hard for sure. So, she's gonna do the stuff, and I put her in the different positions and stuff, and she just craves this stuff.
Okay.
Because you give her the command and she goes after that suit or whatever the threat is, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the interesting thing, how she's trained, and I'll tell you, this dog protects us like crazy.
Of
right?
course.
And she's also the sweetest dog. She'll let my 3-year-old come up and
just beat
hang on her. Yeah, she just kind of lays there, And at the same time, you give her, we call it, she gets triggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she gets the look in her eye, and you're like, you would tear into anything. So another funny story is that everything that she gets a hold of, toy wise or anything, she tears it into shreds.
Of course.
So my brother just came and visited from Idaho, and he's like, I got this toy that
it's indestructible.
Right, for sure. By the time he left my house that day, it was in pieces everywhere. And he's just looking at it going,
How is that possible?
Exactly. So
I love it.
But yeah, she can put some bruises on some people. They come out of those suits, and I'm just like, man, why do you wear that thing? Holy cow, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if she were to bite somebody, if somebody comes to our house, I'm going for her before I go for anything else, right? You just tell her to start barking.
we've seen the news of late more and more ramped up. MTG was like 14 times before they finally caught the person that was calling it in. But having all these conservative, either pundits or representatives being swatted, having these false things called in. And there's a lot of times, whether the people walk away unscathed, I can say that, a lot of times they're killing their pets because they have dogs like that are loyal.
Right.
That as soon as they see somebody forcefully coming in the house, that
They go off.
I don't care what kind of uniform you got, you're not supposed to be in here.
Right.
And they're shooting the dogs.
And those dogs are trained to fight
Protect.
where it hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. They go for spots that are going to hurt bad. She did nip me one time on accident.
Yeah. And did she give you that look afterwards? Like,
oh no, I lit her up.
Oh, you lit her up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because
Okay.
you got the shot collar on them, right?
Oh, right, right.
And some people don't like that. It's like, well, you
Pain
don't
trains.
have a dog like this then. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly. So, and she like right away she knew, and because it was all in close proximity when we were doing training and all that stuff.
Right.
But I lit her up and just she's on the ground. Yip 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 yip.
Yeah.
And after that, she's never done nothing like that again.
Oh,
right?
exactly.
We don't even have the collar on her anymore. And
Right.
I just do the little signal, and she'll, whatever you say.
Yeah.
She's such a good listener anyway,
Well, that's the purpose of them.
right.
I have a problem with some of the people that just have dogs that are just
Look at that
dogs.
dog. Holy smokes. That's a big puppy.
Oh,
right
he's
there.
showing
That's
it.
a big puppy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Was that the bull mastiff?
Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had at one time a what's the huge one? It's not a Saint Bernard. It's the other one that's longer hair than a bull mastiff. It's another mastiff.
Yeah.
What's the other mastiff?
Oh, there's so many. But there you got
Anyways.
English Mastiff. You've got the bull.
You remember that?
Mastiff.
Remember seeing that big dog, Dean, at the man cave? That huge black and white dog?
165 pounds. That's what that one weighs.
Anyways, I watched this dog one time where somebody was Jocelyn was probably 3 or 4 years old, and something happened where she fell in the living room area. And I watched this huge ass dog jump the couch and like barrel in front of everybody and actually hit Jocelyn, knocked her down again, trying to protect her, from whoever, whatever. And we're like, dude, I've never seen that dog just like, every once in a while I'd put on the Carhartts, all my winter construction gear, and my big gloves, and we'd just go out in the yard and I just, let's go. And we'd wrestle out there, and he knew what we were doing.
Oh yeah.
We're having a good time, and I just have my gear on, kind of not quite a training thing, but we go, all right, let's go. And he'd be like, oh, let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
gets all triggered,
You knew I was putting the gear on for him
Yeah.
specifically. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, have at it, buddy. We're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fun stuff.
Exciting.
Let's get to some of the January 6th. That's one of the main things we'll do, and we'll see in the rebroadcast. We got a few people that have chimed back in. Not the numbers we were seeing before, but that's fine, guys. You guys will catch us on a rebroadcast. They're probably all watching Michigan State playing basketball right now. That's fine.
Possibility, right?
That's
the
fine.
tornado hit too, and they didn't know what to do with it.
Exactly. That's fine. So where do you want to start with January 6th? I started to ask the question, why did you want to go? I had people invite me. I had 4 different friends, 2 couples that went. Both of them thought there was something strange going on by midday and made their way out of it. What was your inspiration or impetus to go into the Capitol on January 6th?
Didn't go into the Capitol.
Or, I mean, to go to the Capitol.
Just saying.
Yeah. Good clarification, Ryan.
Picking up what you're laying down
Caught
there.
that one,
I pay attention.
Yeah. To go to the Capitol.
Yeah, you know, to go to Washington, D.C., I mean, the 2020 election was manipulated. There was massive amounts of fraud.
Yeah.
You know, there were so many questions around that. And still to this day, we don't know the answer of what really happened.
Didn't you hand deliver like thousands of sworn affidavits of fraud that was witnessed?
I didn't personally, but there was,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, there was.
Well, for every one person that was there in the Capitol that day, at the Capitol that day, there were 10 to 20 of us at home feeling exactly the same way,
Right.
and either work or obligation or a sense
Whatever
of,
else was,
other people going.
Well, everybody
didn't
puts
go.
pizza boxes over their windows for absolutely no reason.
2020 election.
2020
Yeah,
election.
right.
But I'm
for
saying
no
is
reason.
the
Yeah.
people that were there on January 6th The all rest of us, I got
got
the invite and I said, I looked at it. I don't know where we were. We were probably doing some construction job. And I said, I just can't take the time. I can't break away.
So they call us the J6ers
Mm-hmm.
because we were the ones that were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th.
Right.
But to your point, Jeremy, that's not the only J6ers.
No, hell no.
It is much bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many, 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 many more people than were there that day feel the same way that we do.
Yeah.
And have the same questions.
Yeah.
And, it's funny not to get ahead of ourselves, but Trump wins the 2024 election. Then, Trump and Elon steal the election, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, wait a minute. They stole an election? Well, just a couple of years ago, you were a crazy election denier. If you did
2016 was totally stolen and Hillary was cheated out of it. And
exactly,
it's like,
right?
okay, where are you now?
The number of videos that you see from the Democrats, all the election machines can be rigged and changed and hacked and da-da-da.
Unless they win.
Unless Biden wins.
Unless Biden wins.
By
exactly.
80 million.
Right. 81 million votes. I would joke about that too, right? Call him 81 million Joe, right?
That's one of the first times.
That many votes.
That's one of the first, not
Joe
first
Biden
time.
got
One of
more
the times.
votes than Barack Obama.
One of the times we got totally deplatformed and kicked off of YouTube, took my whole channel, wiped it all out, was we did that. We did the math. 81 plus
Who was on that show?
plus 73, your buddy.
Mike Depper.
And we added it up, and then we said, okay, that's what was 166 million or something like that, whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever the number was.
And I said, okay. And then we took the numbers and we went, okay, but this is the amount of registered people and this is the amount of people that actually voted. And you don't get that total number.
Didn't add up.
It never adds up.
It doesn't. The whole thing doesn't add up of how the 2020 election happened, right? COVID had a lot to do with that. We talked about that today.
Yeah.
The whole mail-in ballot thing, you know.
2,000 mules, all that stuff.
Yep, all of that stuff, right?
Yep.
And the 2,000 mules thing didn't even come out until after the fact. And it's like, talk about more suspicion. I'll tell you what, with the 2,000 mules, had the exact same scenario happened. Exact same, right?
Yeah.
No change in anything. But it was Donald Trump that got 81 million votes.
Oh, it would have been everywhere. It would have been blown up.
All of it would have been investigated.
Yep.
You would have had, AGs from every single state tearing into it, finding out who all those people were, all of the stuff, right? But it's just because of the way that.
Well, because our AGs, majority of our AGs are Soros-owned pieces of shit. So you're in the Capitol just because, stolen election, it's stolen. You want to be there. You want to do what you can. Did you have a concept? Because the initial idea was obviously to rally with Trump, but also to petition Congress constitutionally to give us the 10 day, what do they call it? They don't call it a moratorium. They call it it's not a pause. It's a pause, but
it's a 10-day window, Carl. Just keep it easy, right?
It's a 10-day thing where they have a constitutional, not obligation, but a constitutional opportunity, ability to pause and take a look at it. And you can go back again to 2016 with all of the Democrats that are saying, I object to the delegates from the state of Louisiana being put forth for Donald Trump. I remember seeing those idiot people talking. And that's all that was being really asked for. Was that your mindset when you were going there, is how can I help to push that forward? Okay.
How do we have our collective voices be heard to know that there's support, right?
Right.
And that's the thing too, like rewind back to April 30th, 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we had that rally that day was to number one, say no to Whitmer, right? We're not going to, you can't shove us in a house. You can't shut down our businesses. You can't do all that stuff. But we were there with a clear message, and it was simple. We wanted to be there to support the Senate to vote no on extending the governor's emergency declaration.
Right.
Right. We wanted the senators inside.
Which she only had 30 days, right?
She had 30 days, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to let the senators inside know the people support you. We're out here, right? We support you. So the same thing on January 6th. Hey, Congress, Senate, House, collectively.
Yeah.
We're here supporting you. Americans support you to take that 10-day window and take a closer look at the election.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was the reason there. And I knew it was going to be a historic day, right?
Of course,
I didn't know it would be historic in the way that it became historic, right? That was never like oh, wow, let me, you don't want to walk into a trap like that, right? But at the time, that wasn't really on the radar,
Right.
And so, as we went down there, I saw, there was no fencing, there was no gates, there was no nothing until you get all the way up to the Capitol.
Right at the front of the Capitol.
Right at the front,
Yeah.
right there,
Right. And it really was more like bike racks type of stuff. It wasn't really.
There was no real true barriers.
They've tried to do a couple photographs and some of the stuff of these big barricades. Those were not. Those were like some of the permanent.
There.
Yeah, there
I
was.
saw it with my own eyes. They weren't there.
Yeah, there was the bike racks basically.
Yep.
Type of stuff.
And not even really in good like there was no.
Right.
There was no signs.
Right.
There was nobody on a bullhorn going, you're not allowed to be here. You need to vacate the area. Right. There was so many things that could have been done besides spraying mace into a crowd and rubber bullets and flashbangs that could have let people know that you were trespassing, if that was technically truly what it was.
Which is supposed to be, and when it's the people's house, as you've rightly said, it's the people's house. It's this dynamic of you have every right to be here unless it's clearly posted or announced that there's something special going on or there's a threat thing going on. Other than that, you have every right to go in there. There's really, there's some private areas of it, but the people's house, the main concourses of it, the main thoroughfares of it are we own it.
Right. It's the collective public's building.
Yeah.
Right. And I get it on the flip side too, that you can't just open up the doors and let anybody come walking in at any time. I get it. There needs to be structure around certain things. Sure. There's a lot of documentation in there. There's a lot of other important things. There's no problem with having a structured process for that to happen.
Right.
The question is why wasn't that structured process being carried out that day? Because I have video, and we can go into this in a minute, because recently I got my phone back. It's not this one here, but I got my phone back from the FBI. I got a phone call from them not too long ago.
How long did they have it?
The whole time. They took it when I was arrested, and they gave it back to me 3 weeks ago or whatever.
Wow.
Right?
Ridiculous.
So, I have videos on my phone of when Mike Pence was in the Capitol. Because they're like, oh, the vice president was in the Capitol building. Like, okay, right? He's in there a lot, right? The galleries are open for people to come in and protest. I had videos on my phone. This was part of my case too, right? We had a great defense, I'll tell you. And part of it was you can hear in the videos when Mike Pence is in there confirming Brett Kavanaugh, for example. This was one of the videos where people were in the gallery, protesters were in the gallery yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me that you don't open the doors of the Capitol building and let protesters come in when there's certain things that happen.
100%.
Right? So it could have happened again on January 6th. They could have orderly let people come inside, but they chose to go on the offensive.
Right.
And if you rewind back to 2020, right, all the riots and all that other stuff, think about, police brutality. Oh, it's such a terrible thing, right? But police brutality, we have to end it in America. All that stuff, the language that came along with all of that from
the hype and bullshit.
Yeah, the slogans of the left, right?
Yeah.
Defund the police, all that stuff, right? All that was thrown out the window with January 6th,
Of course.
Because they initiated it. And I saw that happen with my own eyes, right?
Was there a single solitary weapons charge out of 1,500 plus people?
I think there was. Yeah.
Was there one charge?
I think so.
Well, Jeremy Rogers was accused of a weapons charge because they said he violently hit, and we discussed it on the show, that somebody was beating up on somebody else, and he tapped him with his flagpole and said, "Hey, dude, you need to calm down." They called that assault. And he's like, "Yeah, I whacked him on the head. He had a helmet on. I whacked him on the head with my flagpole, and he stopped beating on that person." Is that assault? Is that getting somebody's attention with a little bit of force? But they charged him with straight up assault. He's like, the dude has no bruises. There was nothing ever recorded, no concussions, no anything.
Well, his first testimony said it didn't hurt. If you remember.
Yeah, the first testimony. Yeah, the first testimony said couldn't even remember
when
it.
he came back up. Yeah, when he came back up, it was like the.
So I'm saying in a country supporting Trump, who are, I would say 99% gun owners voting for Trump. Maybe it's a little less. You got a few, blue-haired grandmas out there that are paying attention and may not own a firearm, but the vast majority of people, we all own these guns, and there's not a single firearms weapons charge. Maybe you took a flagpole and tapped somebody with it. But there's no.
People didn't show up armed. I mean, that's,
exactly.
Right?
That's my whole point.
Right.
If you're going to do an insurrection,
you don't show up unarmed, right? And that's common sense, but that's not what they want. Nancy Pelosi's
That's not the
daughter
narrative. That's
has
not the
already
narrative.
said that it wasn't an insurrection. That's on video too, right?
The
Correct.
FBI said it
In
wasn't.
the limo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so these are all misdemeanors that are then blown up to a federal misdemeanor at the most should have been a fine. And yet you're serving 60 days. Other people are being, the Proud Boys are being sent to prison for 20 plus years, who weren't even there,
Right.
who were in very little communication. And I know from studying the Proud Boys and the other guys,
You're talking about that militia, the Oath Keepers. Or
Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are both two groups that formed loosely. They were never a big top-down organization, formed loosely to help provide support for patriotic events and just show up like you had in the 60s and 70s with the Hells Angels, who were not as righteous as these guys. And they were made up of all demographics. And these are guys that go, oh, you're holding a patriotic event? We'll see if we got some of our brothers in the local area that want to go there and just keep the peace. Just want to be there. And I've done it. I went to the Capitol on 2A day and walked through the Capitol with my AR slung around while we recorded a video of Darleaf and who's our gal over there on the west side that's really good, the representative, Angela Regas. She's awesome. But we recorded, we went there, we hung out for the day and recorded all this stuff. And we're there armed in the Capitol. You go up and talk to the police, they're all good because you know what? An armed society is a polite society. Right. Everybody shows up on January 6th, nobody's armed, and they say it's the worst insurrection in his. You know what? If it was the worst insurrection, you'd have never got power because we'd have taken. You had upwards of 1 million people in the Capitol. Do you think Nancy Pelosi and her little Capitol Guard are going to keep people out of if they want to come by force? This was the most polite insurrection. This is not even the if you take it for a literal sense, the velvet resurrection. Oh yeah, kill it. I hate those things.
Oh, right over to you, Larry.
Yeah, get that.
It's probably not going to go flying much from now. And he's gone.
There. And you got to kill them just right, or they still stink.
They're
ridiculous. But yeah, back to this point, the Velvet Revolution, which is not velvet, but it just means that it's from inside. It's the velvet glove type of thing where it's instead of a revolution from outside, it's a revolution from inside where you've infiltrated and you're inside the velvet glove. And I think they did that, the PSYOP, with between the velvet ropes. Because you had the quote unquote Q shaman. He doesn't like to go by that, but Jake Chansley, the guy with the tattoos and the horns, right? He's asking the Capitol Police if he can pray in the chamber to go up on the podium and pray. Right. He's telling other people in the gallery that are walking through, hey, this is our house. This is a people's house. Don't do that. That's disrespectful.
Well, it's just like
he's doing that.
Jeremy, when he was here, said that he told everybody not to touch those statues.
100%.
Treat them with.
And this is the worst insurrection, worse than 9/11, worse than Pearl Harbor. Bullshit. And so you're there on the ground. What are you seeing? You're seeing these stupid bike racks and everybody there. They're not telling you through bullhorns and everything like that to stay back.
For sure.
So where were you located when you were there? What was your first position, and then where did you end up, and how did you get out?
So I made my way up to the Capitol, and then up the stairs, and then I made my way outside of the Capitol. And you ask why I didn't go in, right? There was spots where police officers did let people into the Capitol, and I watched that happen. There was also spots where people were breaking windows out of the Capitol building,
Right.
and I watched that happen too. I remember watching people busting out one of the windows. I'm watching from a little ways away, and I'm kind of like, USA, US, what are you doing over there? Right.
Yeah.
And then I see a guy scaling up on the second story, swinging whatever he was swinging at one of the windows and then climbing across the thing.
Yeah.
That I looked at, and I'm kind of like, I didn't come here for that.
Yeah.
Right. So part of the reason I didn't go inside is watching people do that. And then I did watch with people fight with police officers at one of the doors too.
Okay.
So, that combination of seeing people are being let in over here.
Were these friends of what's the guy's name? Friends of the guy. Let's go. We got to go into the Capitol. Was
Oh,
with his
Ray
friends of the
Epps,
Ray Epps? Were they
yeah.
friends of the feds, or were they just?
I don't. It's hard to know. There's
Yeah.
so many people there. It was a very eventful day. So much happening at once.
I know, Ryan, that we have stupid people in our movement that are
That's true.
grassroots, that don't have the fortitude or the what's the better one? They don't have the prudence to not do certain things. They get so overzealous that they do this. I get this.
Sure. We all have that ability.
But my default is that if somebody does something violent on that level, you're a Fed, you're a plant, because the vast majority of our people go, that's not acceptable behavior. Just like you are shouting, USA, USA, what the fuck are you doing over there? Stop that. That's not how we act.
Exactly how I felt when I went to the state capitol and everybody told me they were going in with their long guns.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried telling people, don't do it. You go in there with the long guns, and they're going to flip the narrative, and it's not good. It's no longer going to be just.
Was that a 2A event, or was this the protest of the lockdowns?
The protest.
This was the protest. This was not a 2A event.
Yeah.
This was the protest.
It's a little different.
Some of my friends told me, we're going to carry our guns and we're going to win. I said, don't do it. You're going to ruin why we're here.
Right.
We are here to protest.
Right.
Yeah. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you necessarily should.
Right.
Sure.
Doesn't mean you never. And I told them, I said, look, we're all Second Amendment people. We got the right to do that. But the second you do that, the media is going to flip the narrative, and it's no longer going to be
about the
protest for the Governor Whitmer's unconstitutional lockdown. It's going to be an armed intrusion.
Correct. It's in those moments when you have the right to show force.
And they use that as an excuse. All these whack job liberals use this as an excuse for all these new red flag laws and banning guns everywhere and new, human target areas, I call them, gun-free zones.
I love that line in Schindler's List when Oscar Schindler's talking to the commandant of the prison camp. And he says to him, what do you think power is? You can shoot that guy, you can kill that person, kill that lady down there. He goes, no, the greatest amount of power is when you know somebody's done something wrong and you pardon them. Yeah. And he learns, and it's that idea of when the greatest amount of strength is knowing when to be weak. That's the greatest amount of strength, is knowing when to, you know what, I could walk in here fully armed and show myself to be the biggest badass, the big balls in the room and stuff like that. But I'm going to walk in here knowing I could do that. And I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to show myself to be as vulnerable as I can be.
That's the real strength.
It is the true strength.
The strength is the being able to restrain yourself.
Yes.
That reminds me of the story I was going to tell, and then we can come back to
All right,
January
6th. Do that one. I'm going to try to fix my camera. Tell that story.
So you were talking earlier about the people that can be corrupted and, all of that kind of stuff. This was when I was on the campaign trail. I was at an event and there was a lot of people there. And I was talking for a long time. We got into this whole thing and then we trailed off into all these questions, and somebody was challenging me. And I forget all the exact details, but somebody was challenging me on you're saying all this stuff, but you're going to go to Lansing and you're going to, you're going to be the exact same thing as everybody else and corrupt and all this other stuff. So I asked everybody to raise their hands. I said, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you cannot be corrupted. And a whole bunch of people raised their hands.
That's a huge question,
I'm
dude.
sorry, it was the other way around. I said, raise your hand if you can be corrupted.
Can be corrupted.
And so I raised my hand along with several other people, and there's a whole bunch of other people that didn't raise their hand.
Okay.
Right.
And I said, if you didn't raise your hand now,
you are the actual
I hope
ones.
you never, ever run for public office.
Wow.
Because you will be the first people that will get corrupted. Because if you don't recognize in yourself as a human being that you can fall into temptation,
and you can have that,
then You have no business.
You're the most deceived.
You're the most deceived. You're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
And so a couple people got all pissed off about that, right?
Yeah.
Well, rah, 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 rah. And so, people applauded it, everything like that. But that's true. If you can't realize that, yes, I can fall into temptation, right?
Yeah.
That puts your guard up. If you think that, oh, no, nothing's ever going to happen, you know what I mean? I could never go for any of that kind of stuff, right? You have to realize that you can. All of us have the ability.
Everybody's human.
Everybody's
human.
So, we have a system of government that's set up right now that obviously has been corrupted, right?
Yeah.
Self-serving. And that's what January 6th was as well. It was a self-serving event for the Democrats.
Yep.
They used that opportunity to corrupt and manipulate everything they possibly could about it, right? I mean, look at Captain Chief Sund, who was the U.S. Capitol Police chief on January 6th, who was blowing the horn. He was waving the red flag. Hey, we got problems here. After the fact about Nancy Pelosi shutting down, the National Guard being there. Nobody wanted to take him serious.
Right.
Why did the January 6th committee not look at him as like, this is a guy that we need to have his testimony here, put it front and center and figure out what he's saying and hold them accountable?
Right. Well, just the fact that they suppressed the idea that Trump offered 20,000 National Guard troops to Nancy Pelosi and to the Mayor Bowser, and turned them down.
Right.
They both turned them down.
And Nancy Pelosi's daughter put out a video proving that.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's not hearsay.
That's on video.
That's on video.
Absolutely it is.
That is.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got a populist that still has a lot of goldfish memory dynamics going
Well, we
on.
have a fake news media that pushes the narrative for the Democrat Party.
No doubt about
and
that.
A lot of that we're going to see start going away. I'm hoping NPR is going to be gone soon.
Yeah, if they don't get funded by the federal government anymore, if Doge takes
Nobody
them
else
all
is
away,
nobody else is going to support them.
they're not
Why
going to
do
do
we
it
need
for free.
to? Well, yeah. Why? I mean, for years
Well-
I've wondered why. Why are we funding PBS and
Wasn't
NPR?
wasn't it under Reagan that he brought back the fairness doctrine, where if you had a whole bunch of conservative radio, you had to have there was an equal amount of leftist. There was something along that lines where
I
where it was equalize. It was trying to equalize it out and give most voice. And there's maybe a small little amount of principled idea in there that you want to give everybody an opportunity. But when you start funding straight up leftist groups like NPR and a whole bunch of these other ones that are listen, if you can't generate your audience, look at our numbers are what they are on our podcast. We do our best out there, right? Michelle Obama put millions of dollars into her podcast, and they were getting 500 to 1,000 people tuning in. Okay.
Yeah, they don't have the actual real
They don't have
support.
They don't.
Well, nobody wants to turn on the radio and listen to how bad the country is. I mean, that's why, like the most successful radio guy in history was Rush Limbaugh, right? And he talked about America as the shining
city on the hill, echoing Reagan.
Yeah, not a septic tank.
No, and what he was pushing for, let's make it better.
Sure,
it's good, it's okay. There's some problems, but let's make it better.
Absolutely.
The only country in the world we're the biggest racist country in the world.
Yeah,
elected a black president. Well, Muslim and whatever he was. But either way, Barack Obama was president, and we're the only country that's ever fought a war within itself to abolish slavery.
That's correct.
But we're the biggest racists.
Right.
Try pushing your bullshit leftist agenda in any other country than this.
Well, wasn't George Wallace a Democrat?
He was, and later, after he was shot, after he did that, reconciled hugely with the black community and became one of the biggest advocates for civil rights on the correct side of civil rights, not the liberal DEI type of bullshit.
Yeah,
but he
DEI.
became one of the biggest proponents for not proponents for false civil rights, but a biggest proponent for true equality. Because he was on the wrong side. And then he met with people. He had a conversation with them and figured out, I'm on the wrong side of this.
So to get back to January 6th, okay, so you're walking by the Capitol you've got all this crap going on in front of you. You wisely didn't go inside, and you've got like crap going on around you. You've got like tear gas going off still, and rubber bullets and all that stuff.
There's a lot of that. still
That's
going
interesting to
around.
me to find out that was going on.
Well, he said earlier that it was going on even before any of that event.
Yeah,
happened.
that was the main part. Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, it continued to go and happen and all that kind of stuff.
They were doing everything they could to provoke the crowds
Well, they
to
shot
violence.
They shot that one lady and killed her. Shot her
Ashley
in the
Babbitt.
neck. Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah. That was. Were you in any proximity to that situation?
No, being that happened inside, I was outside, but it
But I
made
mean,
its
it was
way outside.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I heard that kind of was like, oh, somebody was just shot and killed inside. Like,
Mhm.
I asked myself the question, like, okay, is this about to turn into open fire
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
the crowd, right?
Yeah, Kent
is
State
it-
kind of just were going to open a fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was, around that time that, I start getting ready to pack my stuff and get out of there.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I did. I ended up leaving. There was people just walking away. I mean,
How quickly did the crowds really disperse once stuff started to happen like that? Did it go pretty quick?
I don't even know the answer to that question.
How quickly what time do you remember a time frame when you walked out of there?
I don't. It was, 60 or 90 minutes later, something like that.
After Trump's speech or after the stuff?
After all, I don't remember.
'Cause I know-
timeframes really.
A lot of reports were, like you just said, that stuff was happening, tear gas, other things were happening in the crowds long before Trump was even totally finished. There was incidents happening a little bit further away, but they were saying when he was saying, let us peacefully and patriotically go down to the Capitol now, there were already vast amount of people that were migrating that way towards the Capitol. And that's where I believe some of the initial incidents were. They were trying to stoke the crowd, trying to get the crowd riled up, even at that moment.
Right.
But so you're 60, 90 minutes
Something like that.
into that whole thing, and you're like, I gotta make my exit.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time to go.
Were you with a group?
I was not with a group. No.
You were by yourself?
I went there with another guy.
Okay.
And he actually ended up going a different direction.
Okay.
We ended up getting split up. So
You
we
meet
met
back at the hotel, or did you have a car?
Yeah, we had a car. We parked on the other side of DC.
So you guys didn't
Did he get
stay.
charged too?
He did, yes. Yeah. Yep.
What was the outcome
Yeah.
with him?
He got pardoned right before I think he got sentenced and then pardoned the next week.
Okay. So he didn't have to
never-
report.
No, he didn't have to do anything. Yeah.
Was it a similar sentencing? Because you said you had a good team of lawyers that were kind of battling and producing some evidence for you, even though it's
Yeah.
crooked courts.
Right. And we were going to present the best evidence that we could,
Mhm.
but ultimately I ended up pleading guilty. And the reason why for that is, I think it'd probably be okay to say they threatened me with superseding indictments.
That's what they do.
Yeah, take the plea or we're going to change all your charges
Correct.
and hit you with a long period of.
That's why the feds have a 93 to 95% conviction rate, because they come in,
Right.
and I know this firsthand with my buddy who was involved with 7 other co-defendants in a $52 million mortgage fraud empire. And they said, plead guilty to 2 counts of attempted wire fraud, or we're going to charge you with the entire $52 million individually, you alone. Well, what do you do in that situation?
You look at
You look at your
your
life.
family,
Yeah.
your life, all
Right.
those types of things.
Yeah.
And you say, okay,
You weigh it out.
right. And that's what I did. So I pled guilty.
Yeah.
And then I go into the sentencing. And this is where it gets real good, Larry.
Yeah, I can't.
Buckle your seatbelt, buddy. This is where it gets real good. So I'm at my sentencing, and I have on my phone some of the quotes because recently I got the sentencing transcript.
Mhm.
And I'll read you a couple of actual quotes, but we'll go ahead and talk about, over
Yeah,
you know,
read some.
the general, the government did their little thing, right? Ryan never went inside, but he was stirring up
You
the
were a bad,
crowd.
bad
He's
man.
a bad person. He should have known better. And, all the stuff that they say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, my attorney says all the stuff that he says. And, the government's the one that wrote the plea deal.
Okay.
So basically, they wrote out all the stuff that I would be pleading to. So, if my story didn't match the story that they wrote, they weren't going to accept it.
Right.
Well,
They charged all these people leading up to this with all these stupid process crimes.
Right.
You didn't actually do anything illegal, but when we talked to you, you couldn't remember if you had mayo, mayonnaise, or mustard on your sandwich on the day that we questioned you. And we came back the next day, and you were positive it was mayonnaise.
Right.
But we found out it was actually just mustard, and therefore you lied to us, and we're going to charge you.
Yeah.
But the original reason you talked to me, did I do anything? Well, no. But process crimes. They got multiple people on the process crimes. And so, go ahead.
So we're at the sentencing, and the judge, he starts talking about his stuff, right? Oh, I've had lots of these January 6 cases, and
that's a red flag right there.
Oh, yeah, exactly, right? And he goes into all this stuff about how. I'll just go ahead and pull this up.
Yeah, pull them up. Let's read them to us.
Quotes. These are some of the good ones. There's more than this, too. As the government says, you're certainly not the most culpable of defendants that I've seen. No violence. You weren't an organizer. You didn't assault anybody. You didn't go into the building. And all these factors explain why you have a misdemeanor. Right? So
wow.
Okay. All right.
The lack of evidence is the evidence.
Good detective work, Sherlock. And you were on the grounds for 2 hours, he says, knowing full well you weren't supposed to be there. And afterwards, and we didn't talk about this, but I think you misused the platform that you had as a candidate for elected office to minimize and frankly lie about what happened. Okay.
For elected office.
You weren't running for
You weren't
office
elective. You weren't in elective office.
I was running.
You were running, but you weren't.
Had you announced at this point?
But if you read the phrase back to me again, use the platform for elective office.
Yeah.
That indicates that you're already elected. Doesn't indicate that you're running.
Right.
You use the platform to further your campaign, would have been the correct statement. So this judge can't even articulate properly your status as a political aspirations, let alone know that you being in the Capitol, having no priors, having no actual incident, should have factored in for your benefit, not your detriment.
And even if that, like, you're going to take away my First Amendment right? You're going to say that, because of what I said? Yeah. So he goes into talking about, let's see here, the responsibility for what you, I think it's made more serious by the fact that you do have a public platform where people listen to you. A lot of folks voted for you. A lot of folks followed you, all right? And with that comes responsibility for not peddling falsehoods and conspiracy theories like January 6th was an FBI plot or whatever. Okay?
Did you say that on record?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I guess you did peddle it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I said that because he talked about my Facebook post about how I said the 2020 election was stolen. Right. He said that I had on my personal page that the federal government is coming after me. Okay. And so these are the lies that I said, right? All the stuff.
Oh, the federal government didn't come after.
Okay.
You. Right. We imagined it all.
So I'm not really here right now.
Were those? I gotta ask you, Ryan. Were those entered into the record, or were these things that the judge himself looked at? Were they entered in the record against you? Your post? Yeah. After January 6th?
Yes.
Okay. So you are literally accused of being the bank robber, and then you post how banks are corrupt and we're working on a fiat currency. And they go, well, we don't have any evidence you actually took any money, but you were near the steps of the bank on the day of the robbery. And you posted that banks are bad and take advantage of people. So we're going to include that in this whole
Absolutely.
scam prosecution against you. You got that? Okay.
Yep.
It just came off the top of my head. I mean, maybe I should become a Soros prosecutor. I could just make shit up out of the,
Yeah.
So taking all of these factors into account, and this was 42 pages long. This was only just a couple of snippets of it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So taking all of these factors into account, right? When he's talking about all the misleading things that I've done and, I speaking my mind, things he didn't agree with, right?
You literally tried to just be honest.
I agree with
Share
the
your thoughts.
government that some term of imprisonment is called for in this case. And again, perhaps not for specific deterrent reasons. So we're not deterring from committing a crime, right? Which is really what the sentence is supposed to do, right?
Right. The true criminal, the result of a prosecution should be to punish.
What's it for?
Well, we've misunderstood criminal prosecution in this country. The reality is, at the end of it all, it is ultimately supposed to be a punishment. Yes, you can try to rehabilitate somebody. You can send a message to other people not to do that thing, but it's ultimately supposed to be a punishment. Like you didn't spank your kids well enough when they were younger, and then they went and robbed a bank.
Yeah, but a punishment is supposed to be a deterrent. That's why you're punished.
Correct.
You do something that's
Deter from the
bad.
crime.
When
Correct.
you're growing up as a kid, you do something that's bad, you get a couple whacks in the behind. You're supposed to avoid getting whacks in the behind.
Yeah.
The whacks in the behind is the deterrent that, geez, if I do that again, this might happen again.
Well, to phrase it in the deterrent. So, Ryan, I would assume your 60 days is going to prevent you from ever going to the Capitol if there's a stolen election.
Was the 2024 election stolen?
No, it was duly won
I think so.
against.
He
I
goes
think it
on
was
and
stolen.
says,
Continue.
I really hope that you wouldn't do anything like this again. But
Again, where's the
important for
opportunity?
us- right. But it's important for us to send a message,
Yes.
Oh, so because
particularly for people who are in positions of responsibility like yourself, that this can never happen again.
because you're running for governor.
Why didn't he just say, this is political?
Yeah. So because you're running for governor, they want to send a message that, hey,
Yeah, it's not a deterrent.
this Republican gubernatorial candidate, would you call it, Larry, gubernational?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
When we had
Gubernatorial.
when Kevin Rinke was on our show, I was up on
And 2002 gubernational candidate.
Gubernational.
I was like, Larry.
And then I came back and sat down and told them it was because they were drag racing.
So there you're looking at. So is there? You've got the pardon, and we talked about this. I think we talked about this off air during dinner. You are because you received your pardon. Is there any one? Do you have any desire? That's first part. But two, is there any opportunity to go after them? Because this is clearly, and I think all 1,500 plus of the Jan 6 prosecutions are completely politically motivated, obviously, but also an complete abuse of power. It is abhorrent to me in how much they overstepped and tried to just destroy lives. And I think the prosecutorial abuse and the judicial abuse needs to be addressed. Does your pardon circumvent your ability to be able to redress grievances from the government and say you how much were your lawyer costs? How much was the time away from your family? How much is it rebuilding your reputation, rebuilding, dealing with issues with your family? It sounds like your wife and you have a very solid relationship, but someone like Jeremy that was on 2 weeks ago, his marriage was destroyed through this because they didn't really communicate during the midst of it. And she felt abandoned. He felt like he needed to fight, be a lone ranger out there. So are those dynamics in that?
Potentially, yes. And I don't
So you
know
still
what the
can with
answers.
the pardon, can you still fight back?
Yeah.
Did you want a
absolutely.
refill since Larry decided to go down?
I think I'm going to pass on the refill for
Okay.
some coffee.
You're good,
I'll
coffee.
drink the cold coffee, couple sips here that we
Okay.
got.
Do you need water or anything?
I'm good. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I can tell you that the Tickton law firm,
Mhm.
Peter Tickton,
Mhm.
his law firm, and the McCloskeys, they're teaming up to individually review all the cases and see if there's any opportunity there.
Could you be included in a class action at that point?
Potentially, yes. I don't know what the answer is yet. I think it's too early to say, but
Okay.
we know that it would be very odd for the current administration to
not already do something even beyond you guys.
Right.
I would agree with you 100%. But the reason I ask is because a lot of times what I've read, some of my research is that sometimes the pardons circumvent or even short circuit any opportunity to go after it. And I mentioned this during dinner. And I think a lot of people, they're just happy, pleased to be out from underneath that. They have their rights restored. They have different things, whatever their status ends up being according to the 4 categories of pardoning. But there's other people that are like, I want to be vindicated. I want to have my name restored. I want it to be known, not just, move forward. Right. And they don't always have platforms. They're not someone who's run for governor and comes on different podcasts. And you've got a bunch more coming up. You've made the decision that after a time of kind of regrouping and getting your life back together, you're like, yeah, I got to get out there and start talking now. And so I'm pleased to have you here. It's been a great conversation so far, and it will be all the way through, but sure. Even with tornadoes and storms going through. But I'm just thinking about that dynamic of, yes, we do have an administration that's going to rectify this. At least we hope. That's the expectation, and we've seen fruit of them rectifying so many other things. And just the fact that Trump pardoned almost everybody. I think there was just a few holdouts, and they were vetting those just to see where they were at. But I believe President Trump has now pardoned almost everybody involved in false prosecutions of January 6th. I'm just looking at me personally wanting to be in that position of be vindicated. It's like, it's one thing to win in a court. It's one thing to know that you prevailed. I won 2 court cases over the last year and a half, construction related. Still cost me $14,000 that I'll never get back.
Right.
Yet I won. False attacks, false accusations that I won, but I had to pay $14,000. That hurts.
Right.
That takes money away. And I look at this. There's in Texas, I know for sure in Texas, there's slapback laws. It doesn't apply to feds. It doesn't apply to the government, the state government. But there's slapback where if you are charged falsely or sued falsely by somebody and you prevail in court, there's an automatic provision within their law that you get your fees back, and hope they automatically generate it and say, because you went after somebody else and you were proven wrong, they're automatically going to get compensation for this because you tried to take advantage of the system.
Right.
Frivolous lawsuits. And I wonder about that on state and federal levels with these absolute George Soros-backed malicious prosecutions, these horrible prosecutors backed up by horrible George Soros governors like we have here in the state of Michigan that are doing this type of stuff on state and federal levels. And I want vindication for people like you, for people like Jeremy Rogers that was here on the show, for the Null brothers that are going to come out in a couple of weeks that were caught up in this Whitmer bullshit kidnapping that was all Fed based and everything like that. I want those. I don't want you just to be vindicated. I want you to walk out with the amount of money we've found just in Doge, and we've known this for, if you've been awake, we've known it for decades, how much money the government wastes. You know what? If somebody's going to take some of the federal tax or the taxpayers' money, federal or state, and walk away with a smile on their face, I want it to be someone like you who was maliciously prosecuted, falsely accused, and found to be innocent of the bullshit they came with. I want you to have, if they can put somebody on death row and then find out years later that the DA and the cops colluded to put false evidence in there and they lost 30 years of their life and they walk away with a $10 million check, which is nothing compared to 30 years of your life.
Right.
But it's that dynamic of, I want vindication for you guys. And I want it to be vindication to where it's like, who is the prosecutor in your federal case? I'm not asking for name and same rhetorical. You need to sell your house and you need to pay this man restitution for the bullshit that you did. Not just take it from the taxpayers and make him whole for everything it does. This is the type of fire that I get in me to where I'm like, you fucking people did this to another person who was innocent. That is the most abhorrent thing to me next to hurting children. Next to hurting children, it's false judicial actions that hurt innocent people.
It wasn't just the defendants that were hurt.
It's the whole families. It's
the whole
destroyed families.
And it's really ripped the country apart too.
It does.
Because even if that vindication were to become a reality,
yeah,
there's still so many people out there that will always look at the J6ers, MAGA, as insurrectionists, right? Follow along that whole thing. I mean, the president was shot at multiple times,
right?
Because of this rhetoric that comes from the left.
Or you mean like Maxine Waters? If you see those people out there and you see them with a Trump hat on, you go up there and you make a scene and you let them know they're not welcome here. Oh, really? Sounds like insurrection talk to me.
It sure does, doesn't it? I mean, there's lots of that you can point to. And that's the thing, is that it's all geared right now, but I do believe the pendulum is swinging back hard the other
100%.
direction.
Yes.
It's been geared towards they can run their mouth, do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And there's no repercussions.
Right.
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 And I hope that, here's the thing too, is that Trump doesn't have much longer in office.
No.
Right.
I mean, we look at like, oh, he's got, 3 years and, 9 months or whatever. It's like, that's going to go by like that.
No, he's got until next year. He could lose both houses.
Right.
And then he would be a lame duck.
A lame duck. Right?
That's what most people don't understand. All these executive decisions, they need to be ultimately backed up by a congressional legislation.
And we have a trifecta right now.
Yeah, we need to push it through.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic with this DOJ. I mean, look at this lady that's down in Texas that was, calling for the violence against Tesla and all that kind of stuff. It's
what's her face?
Crockett.
Crockett.
I think.
She's such a fucking retard.
Is she going to be arrested?
I would hope so.
I would hope so too. And there's a very short period of time when things like this can happen. So, I don't know what's going to come of all of this, but I know that it's going to happen within this short window of time that we have over the course of the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I ultimately spent 60 days in a federal prison.
Yeah.
It spun my family it threw us for a total loop. Right.
Yeah.
And it still affects us to this day. Right.
Yes, my buddy lost 8 years. Okay. Or over 8 years. But no amount of time should be taken away from your family and uprooted. And then you've got questions. Your youngest is 3 years old.
Right.
Your oldest is what, 17?
15.
15. That's right. These are things that your kids, no matter how long you're gone, they alone have questions.
Right.
They got kids at school. You're a known commodity in the community. You ran for governor. You were plastered on billboards and placards and greeted people in the street. You can't tell me that your kids aren't walking into high school or grade school and high school and their friends aren't going, what's up with your dad, the criminal? Or something along the line. That's that. And then they come back to you and you may find that one of your children just all of a sudden are just pissed off at you one day. And you're like, what's up, buddy? Oh, a bunch of my buddies were saying shit at school, and I didn't know what to say back, Dad. You went to jail. What am I supposed to say? You went to federal prison. They saying you're some kind of terrorist. You're on some. Those are dynamics that come into families, right or wrong. They're definitely wrong that our families are put in those situations. Right. But now all of a sudden, your kids are faced with those types of rhetoric beyond the political platforms of a Maxine Waters or Jasmine Crockett or Schumer or Adam Schiff for brains. These are things that are coming at your family, and now it's creating a strife that potentially within your family to where you're having to explain. And then your 3-year-old, where's Dad been for 60 days?
Right. It's tough for him.
I guarantee you're a man that walks into your house every night on the night and sees your kids, kisses your wife, sits down and has dinner most of the times, or you got sporting events or whatever, but you're there in the home consistently on a daily basis. Now you're gone for 60 days, and you're, and all law enforcement that I'm sure you would be one of those people like I am, that you would back the blue and all this type of stuff. But then you're looking at them going, wait, I'm going to back you. and you're the ones who are facilitating these type of criminal activities on a federal level, that's criminal to lock someone like you up for being in the Capitol, not in the building, but in
Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. on January 6th. That's all you did, was to be there. There's no incident that they can point to.
And again, it comes back to what the judge said. I was put in prison for 60 days because I ran for governor. Because I went along. Yeah. Went along is not the right thing, but because I was a strong voice of the 2020 election was a fraudulent election.
Right.
And that January 6th was not what they're saying it is, right?
Yeah.
You know, it was an FBI setup, you know, or, you know, the police were the ones that were shooting first, saying those kind of things.
Yeah, where's the pipe bomb?
Is what they, exactly.
Yeah.
That's ultimately why they put me behind bars, because it was no secret, just like when I got kicked out of the Women in Law Enforcement event from Whitmer, right?
Right.
Kick this guy out of the gubernatorial race. We can't have him win. Put this behind bars. We can't have him think that he can come out here and have a strong voice like this again. Right. You know, it's that's the reason why. So, you know, we talk about fortitude and all that stuff. So like for me, you know, it made the whole, it was harder for my family than it was for me, even though it was very difficult for me. Right.
Right.
I mean, I run my own business, you know.
How was that affected?
And absolutely. It was affected in a lot of ways, for sure.
Is your wife involved with you in the running of the business or
no,
not
really? She's got her own business,
so
which that's affected extremely negatively.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
you're Ryan Kelley's wife? Oh, okay.
It's bad, right?
Yeah.
And we won't get into all of that right now, but it's still to this day has thrown her off of her business. Totally, right?
Yeah.
So the damages from that too. I mean, how do you put a number on that, right? Anytime a helicopter, because they had helicopters. When I was arrested, they had helicopters flying over my house.
Such bullshit.
Helicopters, guys.
Dude.
For a misdemeanor, right?
How
for
about
a misdemeanor.
When they show up at Roger Stone's house for a process crime with 19 agents, and they notified CNN before they showed up so that they were there with the cameras.
Right.
It's all illegal.
Right.
It was a process crime to begin with. You're saying that he lied in one of his statements about whether he ate a ham sandwich or a turkey sandwich. He didn't lie about anything else. And yet you're showing up with 19 armed guards. What was the a group? They kicked in your door. What was do you remember how many?
30 of them or something
30
like
of
that.
them. You had helicopters flying over your house.
Helicopters
because you were there in D.C. on January 6th.
Right.
There's no...
Didn't they scare the crap out of your
Big
kids?
time they scared the crap out of the kids. Of course they did, right? I mean, many of my kids were still sleeping. So it's like they
what time did they show up?
I don't know. It was
5 in the morning?
It wasn't like 5 in the morning, no.
Okay.
But it was still early, right? You know, it was still early. 8, something like that, give or take a bit, you know. But you know, it was detrimental to my kids.
Yeah, of course.
Detrimental to my wife.
It's a stressful situation.
It was detrimental to my gubernatorial campaign. Yeah. Which is exactly what they wanted to do. You know, I'm going to go right back to that. That's what they wanted to do, is they wanted to throw that whole thing off. Because a guy like me becoming governor of Michigan, I'm going to do the Mackinac Policy Conference thing. Sorry, we're not playing this game, right? Right.
Mm-hmm.
They saw the courageous acts that I did, right? They saw where I had the ability to say, you know what? I could just go along with this. Nobody's really going to know, right? I mean, who would have known if I would have just went? Who would have known?
Right.
Who would have known?
Yeah.
Right? If I would have just signed the piece of paper that they had, who would have known?
Right.
Who would have known?
You would have known. That's your integrity.
Exactly. I would have known, right?
Yeah.
And I said, me knowing and doing this matters more than me coming out here in front of the cameras and doing whatever, right? Like, I need to stick up for the people that I'm going to represent doing the right thing now before I even ever get the job, right? If I can't draw the line in the sand now, right, I'm not going to draw the line in the sand later.
Right.
So I drew the line, and they saw all that stuff, which is the reason why I was arrested in the first place.
Of course, because they had to send a message. They had to let you know what was going on, and that's the dynamics of it.
Here's an interesting thing.
They don't, and I'm going to let you do the interesting thing, but they don't want actual prosecutions. They want the impropriety. They want the perceptions of impropriety. Right. You said it earlier in the show or during dinner, I can't remember, but it's not about your reputation. You get the pardon, you do all this, but it's the perception in the media, and that's what carries through.
And the public and all that stuff
and
too.
it's not They don't care if they even ultimately get some of these prosecutions through. The fact that somebody is charged means more to them than anything
They can
because
put the whole show on.
the charge is the indictment is the it's a conviction in the public eye.
It's 100%.
Oh, you were charged with this. Well, you must be guilty because, why would you even be charged unless they went through the preponderance of evidence and found out through a grand jury that
Right.
they didn't go through a grand jury. They didn't go through preponderance of evidence. They mocked up a bunch of shit, ran it through an AI thing according to what they fed into it and spit out a couple of charges like they did with Trump.
Yeah, even if they ran it through.
Is your mic on? It's on the computer. I turned it on twice. If you're going to talk, turn it on. Sorry, Larry. That's your headphones, buddy.
My headphones.
Grab the other one.
We'll get through this.
We'll get through this. My kids are down there playing balloons and they get louder and louder as they play, and I can't hear you.
I need some batteries.
Switch it.
So while you're figuring this, here's the interesting thing.
Give me the interesting thing.
So
Go ahead. Interesting thing.
there's 2 people in the United States that during their candidacy as front-runner candidates were arrested.
Okay.
And it's, who's the first one?
Trump,
Who's the second one?
Ryan Kelley.
Boom.
Is there anybody
and
else?
There's no one else. There's no one else that was a candidate for office.
Okay.
That I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there was anybody else, right? I've looked around enough, but I don't believe that there's anybody else.
Okay.
Trump was obviously the front runner
Right.
in the primary for the 2024 election.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and when they went after him, before they did any of that to Trump, they did it to me, obviously on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But nonetheless, it doesn't matter the size of the scale, right?
What time were you? What time did they bring the charges in, break down your door, and come after you?
June 9th, 2022.
Okay. So from June 9th as being the front runner and leading it to the time of the August 2nd, you went from being the front runner in the primary to being, you ended up fourth place. Tudor Dixon got the Trump endorsement. She got the Trump endorsement, which was a bump overnight for her. She doubled her numbers overnight.
For sure.
She was behind Kevin Rinke for sure, and maybe even Garrett as far as numbers.
I think,
but that's why I'm trying to figure out your timeline on here, and I'm looking at this over here on my browser over here. But just looking at it, where we can see that this was the primary, but you're talking about June 9th?
Yes.
June 9th is when you were raided and charged. And from that point on, where were you at? Do you remember what your numbers were leading up to this? Leading up to June 9th? Do you remember where your numbers were?
Go to is there you got X on here?
Yeah.
Jump on X real quick.
Okay. I'm going to switch back while I do the research. Yeah, I'll go to your X account. Is that where you like to post a lot?
It's the only spot I post. TikTok
Nice.
Sometimes too.
Okay. I'm going to search. Do you want me to just search it, find you?
Yeah, stop by my name, Ryan D. Kelley. Kelley. It'll probably start popping up. There it is.
Okay. Why am I not following you? No, I am following you, right?
No, it doesn't look like it. You can start now, though.
The
There
I
you
should
go.
be following. Okay.
Check it out.
So
Now look at the top. Right there.
right there. I'll go back to that. Oh, it's already up behind me. I'm clicking over to it. I got to go to the wall feed. Okay, there we are.
The
So
survey
there you
was
are.
conducted just
This
before
was
I was arrested. You see, it came out the day after I was arrested.
Yeah.
Obviously, they conducted it just before that. It was for that week.
Yeah.
Boom, right there.
So the undecided, right?
That's a big number. Leading into the Trump endorsement, not all of them was going to go to Tudor Dixon.
She's at 5%.
Right.
Give me the timeline of when people announced too. That's
I announced first.
okay.
Garrett announced next. Then Tudor Dixon. Then maybe Ralph, and then Tudor, and then Kevin.
Kevin was last.
I think so.
Okay. So, but at the time of you doing this, you're totally grassroots. You're leading. 17%, you would have just kept gaining traction.
I wouldn't have got the whole 45.
No,
right?
no.
But the more they would have talked about this,
Yeah.
if I hadn't have been arrested, because then it was all about that, right?
Right.
So Ryan being arrested, and the attorney general was making comments about it and everything. I mean, it was all out there. There was a lawsuit out there trying to get me thrown off the ballot for being, Article 14, Section 3, that whole thing, right?
Right.
Insurrectionist, that failed and went nowhere. But there was all the controversy around, Ryan going to jail, Ryan being charged with January 6th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately Trump endorsing Tudor Dixon is what threw her right over the top.
Right. I
That was on my birthday too.
Happy birthday to you on
really?
that. Yeah, nice.
He endorsed her on my birthday.
Nice.
So that threw the whole thing off. So we'll never know. We'll never know the outcome. But here's what I'm going to say: I stood the best chance of beating Gretchen Whitmer.
Right.
We'll never know the answer to that. And I suppose all the
Clearly
other
she wanted to
candidates-
kick you out of the state police ball or gala or whatever the hell that was.
For sure. Because they know that Ryan going around to all these different events, shaking hands, meeting people,
Mm-hmm.
doing the stuff that's going to, if I would have won the primary, I would have quadrupled down on that. I would have been starting the day that I won. The day I was announced, boom, we're going to start doing this right now. And we're going to go full throttle all the way up until the election. 100%.
100%.
And they know that.
Well, and then you would have forced the Republican Party to back you.
Right.
Because sometimes they're reluctant on grassroots candidates, stuff like that. They don't want to always support you, definitely during primaries. I know specifically with Tudor Dixon, as soon as she got the nomination and won the primary, there was a whole bunch of Republican blue blood money that dried up immediately.
For sure. She was the designated loser.
She was the designated loser.
That's the fact.
Yeah.
Tudor's a nice lady, okay?
She is.
She's a very nice lady, but she's not, obviously, she's not the type of candidate that's going to get people fired up.
She could have eviscerated Whitmer multiple times in a very polite. You take J.D. Vance against Tim Walz, all right, in the primaries.
That's great.
And you contrast that with Tudor Dixon and Whitmer. J.D. Vance had Tim Walz thanking him for insulting him.
Yeah. I remember that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you telling me I'm a piece of shit and I'm not worthy of being a presidential candidate. I really appreciate that. And I like what you had to say on this. Now, back to you. It was so pathetic, Tim Walz was, but J.D. Vance was so articulate.
It was good.
It was phenomenal. And I watched the Tudor Dixon debate with Whitmer and I'm like, you had so many opportunities to be articulate and yet put her in her place and tell her she was a stupid lying bitch, and you didn't do it. And you had the estrogen power to do it. It's not like they always try to, when Hillary was running against Trump, it's the man beating up on the woman. No, you know what? Your policies are shit, and you need to be told to shut the hell up.
Right.
And Tudor had all of that opportunity with Whitmer, and
didn't deliver. She didn't deliver.
She didn't deliver. That's a nice way of saying it.
And to her credit, I mean, she was the designated loser.
Of course,
people walked away from her.
Yeah, she was propped up. She was she was a turtle on a pole.
For sure.
How's a turtle get up on a pole when it didn't get there by itself?
Yeah,
and then you leave it to hang and do whatever.
So I'm going to stick with forever that I stood the best chance of beating Whitmer.
I don't doubt that
for all of those reasons.
Yeah,
and nonetheless, it turned out how it did.
Okay,
and here we are. All the damage that was done to myself and to my family with all the prosecution, the stuff that the judge said, we're not going to turn you from committing crimes. We're going to, you were a candidate for office that lied about January 6th and lied about the 2020 election. So those reasons were put behind bars.
Wait, Ryan, I just want to clarify for the people out there in the audience. Has it deterred you from being a person who might walk through the people's Capitol?
I was thinking about, now that I have the stuff back from...
I just want to know.
So the FBI gave me my stuff back, right? So I got all the things that I had. So, I can maybe go to the Capitol and do a photo shoot.
Dude.
And then,
you know what?
If I do run for office ever again, I could print those out and sign them for fundraisers.
Dude, Ryan,
just saying.
Listen, I'm gonna go on record right here on the show. I don't know if you still have a team together.
The team is all still there, man.
Okay, because I would gladly grab the big camera here in the box and a couple of GoPros and maybe a few cell phones, and we would gladly go with you to the Capitol and do a full-blown photo shoot.
Oh, yeah.
And have you going. But if you've still got the team together, then I know you're in good hands.
Yeah.
Your team did a good job.
We did well.
I pulled up this on X. Since we went to your X account, we pulled this up. I want to know, this is your blueprint for 2024. I want to know what you're looking at. This is January 2022, 2025. So you just released that. You want to walk us through a few of these? Are we done with January 6th kind of?
Yeah, we're good.
I mean, you're going to come back. You're going to come back because we cooked some good food and we've had some
the
good.
venison was great.
Dude.
I really like those.
I really wanted you to
peppers.
try the lamb chops,
Next
but I get
time.
it. But I get it. Dino, did you have that third lamb chop?
I'm all about your mushrooms.
Oh, you love the mushrooms. Okay. I had those lamb chops and I've learned to, like, you sear and there's a way to cook them. And I messed it up the first time. It wasn't bad. They were still edible. But once I've got it figured out now, I'm like, I'm a ribeye guy. I like a ribeye or a porterhouse.
There you go.
Dean and I split a porterhouse the other night. But I'm either a ribeye, but I was like, what do I have here if I don't have to run the store? Because I was doing a bunch of stuff in the man cave and I was like, oh, I got some venison steaks and I got these lamb chops. So, but either way, you'll be back. So we'll dive into more of this stuff.
We can try a brisket next time.
Dude, if I'd have
I'm a
known.
brisket guy.
Oh,
All
dude.
day, all day.
Now a straight brisket or corned beef?
Straight brisket,
Okay.
preferably.
Okay.
But my wife loves the.
What's your
corned beef stuff.
What's your preference?
For the brisket?
Yeah.
Like how to cook it?
Yeah. What's your preferred method of preparing it?
Yeah, the best way I like to do it is have some apple juice.
Yep.
Put some apple juice on it.
Okay.
Black peppercorns, coarse, right? Nice
Okay.
and coarse. Pat
Yeah.
it all in there good. Put some olive oil across it. Some nice
Ooh.
like kosher salt, something like that.
Dude, we're gonna have to cook right after the show now.
So-
He's getting me all geared up.
This is real good, right? You wrap it up in the tin foil.
Okay.
And leave it there for probably a day or two, right?
Just to marinate, just to let it soak
sit
in.
there, yeah.
Okay.
Especially with all that real thick kosher salt, right? Let
All
it
right.
get in there, tenderize it real good.
Ooh, so you're talking 24, 48 hour,
Yeah.
just
Letting it cook up there.
Pure.
Yeah, and then slow cook it for about 10 hours.
you got a pellet stove? You like to do the pellet or you
that
do the
would
oven?
Be good. We got an oven that we do it in.
Okay.
I'd like to do the smoker or a pellet stove, but normally we just do it in
What's
the
your
oven.
temp? About 225,
Yeah, 220, and then boost it up there at the end.
at the very end?
Yeah, boost it up so you can get that temperature up there.
So
pretty
the
good.
next time you're on the show, we're gonna have to do a 3-day lead in for this whole
get
thing.
that brisket rocking.
Dude, 48 hours of just letting it cure and then a 10-hour cook.
Lots
I
of
love it.
garlic, pepper.
How tender is that stuff when it comes out?
So amazing.
Does it just fall apart?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Dude.
You just take and tear it up. Usually a couple of tongs, the forks, just rip that thing apart.
Oh yeah.
So you wanted to talk
So
about
do you
the
do it
Kelley-
like I know we'll get to that in
Yeah.
a second. You got me talking about food now.
Yeah. I
So
didn't
when
want
you-
to get us
when
too
you-
far off.
When you shred it, do you shred it like a not like a pulled pork or pulled chicken, but you do it you is it come apart like that? Kind
Yeah, it
of
just falls
stringy a
apart.
little bit and falls apart?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm in. I'm in.
So good.
Dude. It's on recording. We got this. So yes, we'll get to this now.
Yeah.
Right.
The Kelley blueprint for
The
Michigan.
Kelley blueprint for 2025. Well, it's the blueprint for Michigan. What give me your bullet points here and let's walk through this.
Well,
Because
I remember circulating that.
Yeah.
No, this is the new one.
This is the new one?
Yeah,
So that's
you
what I want-
circulated the 100-day plan,
Yes.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of like in my notes today. I had where are you today, and then what's the future. This is political, so we'll get back to family and stuff like that. But let's do this political. This is where you're at, but it's also the future. This is where your current thinking is about the plans, but it's also plans for the future. So let's break these down. Give me your stump. We're still having a good conversation. You
Sure.
enjoyed your cigar. You didn't bring two.
I didn't.
You wishing you had a second one now. I
Yeah.
thought Larry said that you brought one for me, and I was like, well, you could have had it. I know some guys that they'll have a smoky drink like this. This is DeSharona, but they'll do like a brandy or a whiskey or something like that, and they'll puff the smoke back in there and then take a drink, so they
Drink it.
get both flavors.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting way to do it.
That
They
is
get
a
that
good
circle
way.
flavor.
I
Yeah.
used to do that. Yeah.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
10 years sober.
Yeah.
You didn't go through any programs. You just made see,
No.
that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good commitment. And again, we all have our vices. It's
sure.
what do you enjoy and do you need it or not need it and move on, you know? Enjoy a cigar. I loved watching you have that cigar because dude, it's great.
Great.
You know,
paired
my
with the
favorite,
coffee.
one of my favorite flavors is cherry Cavendish. I love when somebody's around me smoking a pipe with cherry Cavendish. You ever smell that?
Yeah, I used to smoke
Great.
it.
Oh my, that's just a gorgeous.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
dude.
love the smell of Captain Black.
Well, if you guys, all right, we're not totally deviating, but if you guys look over here, you know what? I'm going to actually do it. I'm doing it while we're doing live. If you look over there, oh, I went the wrong way. If you look right there on the shelf, that guy has been with me for probably 20 years. And that is, we call him, I christened him Chief Cornerstone.
Okay.
So that is an Indian chief there. And I put my incense in there. And I've had that here in the man cave since I started being in the man cave. But I had that in my prayer closet for a good part of 10 years. And I would go into my prayer closet and at that time, I would do prayer from anywhere from half an hour to a long time. And I would light an incense and go in there and just talk to the Lord. And so Chief Cornerstone. So what I love the smells. I love the scents. You know, you get into essential oils, you get into stuff like that. And you deal with those are very powerful to us. Those scents, those essences and stuff like that. So, all right, let's get into it. Sorry, Ryan, I had to do that. I had to be nostalgic.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Here we go. Bullet point number 1, cutting regulations, man. Do it. What do you got?
Kelley regulation cuts, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a little overview of this first. And you see the date that's on there, right?
Yeah, January 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, just like 2 days after Trump. But you didn't throw this together 2 days beforehand. You had this in the.
People ask me all the time, right? Are you going to run for governor again? Are you going to run for office again? Here's a story for you too. I was in Meyer.
Yeah.
This is just within the last week, right?
Okay.
We walk in. I got my family with me, and we're going to shop for fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
And some lady stops, looks right at me. She goes, "You're Ryan Kelley, aren't you?" And I'm like, "I am." She's like, "Oh my gosh, I voted for you. Thank you for all the stuff you did. Sucks what happened to you," whatever she said. She's like, "I hope that you run again for something. You have my support. I'll help do anything that I can." Right. And I shake her hand, talk to her for a second, introduce her to my family, all the same stuff that I normally do. Right.
Right.
And,
being a real person.
And so, that happens often. I'm places and people recognize me. They want to talk to me. People I've never met them before in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
So that encourages you a little bit towards that direction?
Yeah, a little bit. But, so getting at this, like I've been thinking about it for a while. Right.
Okay.
Do I run again? Do I not run again? Right. Is it the right thing for me to do? Right.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to I'm not looking for just a government job. Right. I ran last time because we had currently still now a horrible governor that just locked the whole state down, and we needed somebody that was going to be able to not only just respect the rights of people, but set the things straight that needed to be set straight. The number one that you see on here, the Michigan Department of Government Efficiency, I already had that last time. I didn't call it Doge, but appointed a special auditor to find all the fraud and waste that's in the budget and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's on the 100-day plan, and you circulated that.
Yes.
So we had that. People loved that. People loved that we were going to do that. And as a gubernatorial candidate last time, gubernatorial, whatever you want to call it, right?
We'll call it Goober
I
National.
studied the budget. So I read Article 5 of the Michigan Constitution to know what authority the governor even actually has in the first place, right? So I could speak on it intelligently. And then I also read the budget.
What a concept.
That's one of the things one of the main jobs of the governor is to sign the budgets, to fund the government, right? I mean, it comes from the legislature, but the governor has to sign it.
Correct.
So I'm reading through all this stuff and I'm going, why are we spending $10 million on this?
Right.
Why are we spending $57 million on this? Are you kidding me?
Right.
And you start adding all these things up and you're like,
It's
this
ridiculous.
is hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, right? And so I could intelligently speak on that stuff that we're going to get rid of all of those things, right?
Right.
So now Doge is popular and, I was thinking, hey, we need to establish MI-DOGE, the Michigan Department of Government Efficiency.
Right.
So I did put the date on there because I'm the first person that has brought that up, right? So I wanted to tag that because you're going to see all of the gubernatorial candidates are going to talk about doing that, right?
It's hot. It's a hot topic right now.
It's a hot topic. So here's the thing, Jeremy. It's a hot topic. People are going to talk about it. Here's what I say. Who can you trust that's actually going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody, you elect
somebody
me,
walked on the
X,
island
Y,
and
Z.
said, I'm not going to sign your stupid paperwork and I'm not going in there because I'm not going to prove to you that I didn't get injected.
Boom. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, that's what that is all about right there. The number one, right?
Yeah. We got to cut it.
Right. The energy plans, we can't cut down forests and put up, solar panels. We need to use nuclear
It's
energy,
ridiculous.
right? We have to have a plan that spreads across all facets of that, and use it smart and wise.
Well, and you got the number 5 line 5 pipeline. We need to fix that.
That needs to be
that needs to be straightened out. All that stuff
legislation needs to be done. Put the new pipes in there, etc.
We had our local grassroots group in here last night by our good friend Joe Farkas. He always tunes in the show, so I'll give him a shout out. But he brought in, and I end up talking with people. I'm hosting, just having them here. But I said, you know what? Solar works personally, residentially.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
It's a great thing if you're doing it residentially. Battery backup system, you can do solar. There's even a couple different systems for wind that work residentially.
Right.
This whole commercial solar is bullshit. It does not work. The transmission lines, by the time it's actually goes to where it's supposed to go and then disseminate to the people, it never recoups the cost that it takes it. So the energy plans like this, I'm always for, listen, we got to straighten out this energy grid. We've got to deregulate it. We almost need to go with it as a national resource type of thing, to where it's just available for everybody and it's regulated. I lean towards the Alaska type models as far as natural resources. And I think that some of our gas and electric type of if the family courts can send somebody in here to tell me that I'm not treating my kids correctly or make a question, right? Which I had something 30 years ago when I lived up in the Thumb area.
Answering my phone. My wife's calling. Hey,
is she calling? Right, live on air?
You're on the show, Tab.
Oh, it's still going?
Still going?
Yeah, we had a tornado go through, so we're still rambling along.
You want to say hi to everybody?
Not live on the show.
You're on the show. Yeah, you are.
She's quiet now.
She's hiding.
Hey.
You can wave to her. Give her some love. I love it. I love it. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Here, let me give you the rail real close.
Zoom on in.
There you go.
There you go.
Let me move my fat head out of the way. Right there, Ryan. You can see it right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You're on. Tabitha, everybody. Here you go.
Tabitha. Your picture, your family's right there at the bottom.
Yep, you're on.
So I was going to do that. But yeah,
I'll call you when I'm on the drive home. All right.
Thank you for letting us your man be here, Tabitha. We appreciate it. Anyway, so my whole point was that I like the idea that, if it's a national resource type of stuff, people are going to need to make money, right? Then you lease for the oil fields. You go out in there and you mine the oil fields, but the revenue, the vast majority of the revenue beyond the lease, beyond the profits of the company there's a dividend that the residents of Alaska get.
Right.
Well, why are we not doing similar things with electrical and gas? If I live in a county that I have one choice for my gas, one choice for my electric, maybe two, but it's all coming from the same place, I don't have a choice. And it's completely and totally regulated by the government. Why is that not something that's included in my perks as being a citizen born in America? You know what I'm saying? Offset by the natural resources that should be leased out. You know what I'm saying? There's our dynamics. It's not, there's no socialism involved in that. That's just honoring the fact that we have resources in this country that are natural resources to all of us.
Right.
And then we have national expenses. And then I look at Doge, that's finding out that we spent billions of dollars on providing internet to people that nobody ever got.
Yeah,
Billions of dollars to make
Oh,
recharging stations that nobody ever got.
What was it? $8 billion for one recharging station?
Something like that. It's bullshit. All right, next one here, Ryan. You've got eliminate DEI, which we're seeing a lot of evidence of, right?
Yeah, that's in the works already too. This being, again, Ryan Kelley's blueprint for Michigan. This isn't a 100-day plan like last time. This is not me announcing I'm running for anything. It says at the bottom, not paid for by any candidate committee, just educational purposes. It's just a vision of the state. People know who I am. I mean, you can see the number of people that liked it and the amount of shares that I got in the comments and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It went viral. It was very popular. People spread it all over Facebook and
almost 50,000.
Yep.
Traffic.
So, the whole DEI thing, I mean, we're seeing that fall apart in front of our eyes. Even the state of Michigan or the University of Michigan is backing off all of that now, right? DEI it's not what it says it is, obviously. And we don't need to get into all the different mechanics of all that stuff right now.
Right.
But that's what that whole thing is. And that was part of it last time. Back before it was a popular thing to say, well, this is wacky, loony, lefty stuff that, I was a proponent of that part of it was like, I am going to take out DEI in all of state government, including all of our schools.
Right.
We're eliminating all of it. Every single position in government, it's all going to be gone. And I said that back in 2021.
Yeah.
And so again, that was like a holy cow. We can't have a guy like this actually become the governor, right? Again, arrest him.
It wasn't even a house of cards or even paper mache. I was trying to think of a way to just say it. It was literally a piece of paper, the weakest piece of paper folded in half and standing up and saying, this is the tent we've all got to get under. Right. This tent it's literally a folded piece of paper. What are you talking about? And they literally tried to bring this out. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. No, Dr. Martin Luther King, no matter what his flaws were, said everybody needs to be judged by merit, not skin color. And how far have we deviated?
The Declaration of Independence, right?
100%.
All men are created equal.
Correct. And they go,
unless they're a Republican.
They go, all men are created equal, but you only let them be 3/4 or 3/5 of a person. Yeah, because the Democrats wanted to include them as in the census and the countings as whole people, but not give them full rights under the Constitution. It was brewing. The founding fathers on the right side of things wanted to eliminate slavery day one in the Constitution, and they knew it was something they were going to address. So they put those provisions in the Constitution, knowing that it would be addressed later. They didn't expect it to be a full-blown civil war, but they knew that it would be addressed later and it would be taken care of. I don't think that we handled it completely the right way. Yeah. 14th Amendment's got some flaws and some other things like that, but Emancipation Proclamation at least made a perfunctory declaration that all men are, again, created equally endowed by their creator by certain unalienable rights.
I think the Democrats are as angry today as they were when the Republicans originally took the slaves away.
You mean when they started the KKK right after the revolution, the Civil War? Is that what you're saying? Ryan, you've got Kelley's home and corporate tax cuts. I'm very interested in this because I believe that beyond some of the discussions we've had, I believe that the property tax, let alone I think two taxes that need to be eliminated across the country is the income tax and the property tax. Because if you put a lien on somebody's income and you put a lien on somebody's property, we know that, being a constitutionalist, that our founding fathers originally had drafted it, with George Mason being one of the primary ones, that it was life, liberty, and property. But they didn't want it to be viewed as a lordship type of thing where you're automatically obligated to receive property. They wanted it to be something where, again, when we had the Sooner state, where the person who got there sooner got the piece of property, and you literally got there, staked out your claim, and if you maintained it for 5 years, something like that, you owned it, and you owned it right. And we had a thing called land patents, which Larry and I have talked about on multiple shows. And so I think there's a huge dynamic of eliminating property taxes and eliminating income taxes, which I think Trump is working towards. Of course, we're a state that has a a state income tax, but look at the states that are prospering, like Texas and Florida, that don't have income taxes, another additional income taxes. And so there's things. Tell me about your home and corporate tax cuts that you're looking at for the state of Michigan.
Right there with you. If you want actual freedom,
yeah,
you can't have property taxes. Because with property taxes, you're taking away somebody's ability to actually own that property.
Correct.
Because even if they pay it off, you're renting it.
Yeah.
Don't pay your property taxes, they eventually take the home from you, even if you have no mortgage on the property.
You can have a retiree that's paid off their mortgage 20 years ago, that the value of their house went up, the county or city has increased the value of their house, and now they're paying a property tax that exceeds what their previous mortgage was, right. And they lose their house and goes into tax lien and gets auctioned.
So I really think, and the first thing people say, well, how are we going to pay for the schools? How are we going to pay for local fire departments? How are we going to pay for the police officers? And my first response to them is, do we really need to be spending billions of dollars in corporate welfare and the amount of other wasteful projects that we have? What does that number come to?
Right.
Right. And without diving into the weeds and all that stuff, we can do that later.
Yeah.
There's room for all of that.
Yeah.
But the thing is there's so much waste and fraud that if you just clean that up, you will have billions of dollars that could be allocated properly.
Right.
That would be able to backfill a lot of that stuff. Absolutely.
You're eliminating the Department of Trump's eliminating the Department of Education. We're eliminating DEI, which is paying, what was it, Larry? And Heartland's trying to employ somebody for $120,000 salary for DEI bullshit. No, the PR. They're doing the PR one.
PR.
Dude, get rid of PR, get rid of DI, get rid of all this bulk. You've got a superintendent over there running a school district. It's a large school district, but he's making $250,000 to run a school district plus perks and stuff like that.
Running into the ground.
And he's losing his kids. Get rid of property taxes and then do this. Come in and go to each resident and go, here's what it costs for fire. Here's what it costs for your local police. Here's what it costs for your kids to go to school. And do it on a charter basis, and you pay it. If we turned all of the schools into a private charter model to where you pay a tuition for your kids, we will change all the schools back to actually teaching reading, writing, or arithmetic, and not sending kids home with 10 hours of homework when they just had my kids for 10 hours. Why are you sending them home with anything? They should have come home ready to work in the garden, hang out, play some basketball, play some hockey, do something.
Do what they want to learn, whatever those things are, right? Choose your own adventure type stuff. But you're right. I mean, the allocation of all of it, our resources is so far off. It's thousands of dollars that people spend every year on property taxes. Put that back into people's pockets. They're going to want to take care of the community. They're going to want to make things better. I mean, people are squeezed so tight. I mean, you don't want to make donations to help take care of the local park. You don't want to, whatever the thing may be, right? Because
you just passed a multi-million-dollar millage on me and my family, and then you want me to actually donate to the public park on top of it?
So, those things there, I think, need to change because the amount of prosperity that would come for the people just with that, the amount of money that would go back into the economy that people could spend on, their businesses, buying the things that they want to buy. I mean, you're going to create a whole different level of prosperity with that. The corporate income tax right now is 6%. Whitmer wants to raise that too because we need to fix the roads, right? We heard that before somewhere. But
that's what she ran on the first term.
This was, this is something that I just had laid out here, right? This is Kelley's vision for the state. Drop it from 6 down to 1.
Okay.
And if you're $5 million in revenue or less, 0%. Let's give you an incentive to keep growing your business.
100%.
Right?
No, I agree with you.
Put it back into your business. Grow.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that number be 0 as well.
And you also addressed Goshen and the
cattle. That was
the
done
cattle.
by Marshall. Yeah.
And then you also terminate state approvals for any CCP-owned companies. I think they need to be booted out. I know Texas is doing Texas. What's the other state? There's another state that's doing some lawsuits right now. There was one of the states. They went after them and said, because you were involved in the lockdowns, and it's been proven and released that you were involved in this. We're back charging you for all that has cost our state, and you were going to recoup our money. It was a several $billion lawsuit that they won. It was amazing. So those are huge things. Yeah, the Goshen things, we've followed that quite intensely, and we've reported on that a number of times in the show. All right, your plan to amend election laws, because this was. Do we really have to amend election law, or do we have to clarify what is truly election law? Because the governor just came in and were there any laws actually passed when all the lockdowns happened? Because they seem to just, the Secretary of State says, oh no,
We're just going to do
whatever the hell we want.
And then they push through everything with the proposal to, eliminating the voter ID affidavits, I think is important.
Yeah.
Anybody can just show up without their ID and say, well, I have one and I'll just sign that I'm good to go.
No,
right?
it's bullshit.
Enhanced mail-in ballot validation. I think that those should be a very limited case really anyway, right? You shouldn't just,
right.
But I'll tell you this too, there's a lot of Republicans that voted last time by mail. There really was.
My mother-in-law and my wife both voted by mail.
Yeah.
But then they go
vote by mail, but I'm
Larry, because you're a truck
driver.
driver. But then they go on the website of our local township and they verify that their vote was recorded.
Right.
They've gotten me absentee ballots. I have, the couple times that they did, I didn't know it. They just ordered theirs. They ordered mine. I took mine, day of voting. I walk into my county clerk. I put it on the counter, void this out. I'm going over to vote in person.
Right.
And they do that and it's recorded. But you're exactly right. And really what this comes down to is really valid proof of that you have a right to vote here. That's really what it comes down to.
Of course.
The elimination of this voter. And who would be opposed to these types of things? Listen, if you're
Somebody wants to steal an election.
100%. And that's the dynamic that we have to look at is like, look, you want to cheat and defraud in an election. That's why you want to push this stuff, because if it was legitimate, you wouldn't win.
So voting is a right. We know that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's in the Constitution.
It's almost, I would even switch over a category of a responsibility.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Owning a firearm is also a right.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of speech and freedom of religion are both rights. Mm-hmm. But nobody says you have to go to church.
Correct.
Right.
Nobody says that you have to speak up and make your opinion heard.
Yeah.
Nobody says you have to own a firearm.
Correct.
Nobody should be going through whatever lengths they have to make sure that everybody votes. You don't have to vote if you don't want to.
Correct.
And
That's
it's
right.
a responsibility for you to vote.
Yes.
So if you want to do it, make it a priority in your life.
Correct.
Right? So right now, the way the Democrats want to do it, they want to just make it so that let's just have 105 days of early voting. Like everybody can get in a mail-in ballot, whatever they want to. Just throw them all in. Just drop them off anywhere.
No.
It doesn't matter. Just come on, just throw it over. And so much fraud happens from that, right?
Yep.
I don't really think that we need to be going that far out of our way to make sure that every single person votes.
Well, you drag it out like you do in California, and a month after
For
the
sure.
actual election, they
Still
flip four seats.
Right. Still counting,
in the House.
Still counting.
It's
still
ridiculous.
Counting, still gotta find
Now,
more
I
votes.
understand someone like Larry. Okay, here's a simple thing: make it a national holiday or a state holiday. If we've got a special statewide election, it's a state thing. Hopefully, your employer can recognize that, and you get compensation, or you take half a day, whatever it is, and everybody goes and votes. If it's a national federal holiday, make it a federal election, make it a federal holiday.
Right.
Simple. Then we'd eliminate the vast majority of the mail-in. Now we go back to the only mail-in ballots that were legitimate is our overseas military.
Yeah,
Overseas,
Absentees
you got
military.
overseas military, you got handicapped people.
There are some
there's
legitimate.
ways.
There's
You have
and that's
people
why
like airline pilots and truck
It's
drivers.
there's some legitimate.
Yeah.
enhanced mail-in ballot validation.
Correct.
So put mechanisms in place that
Right.
lets you validate for those particular reasons. Right.
Could you
Being
potentially
lazy is not one of them.
correct?
Right.
Could you potentially be have to show your ID to pick up a new cigar at the cigar shop?
I'm getting kind of old, gray.
No, I get
hairs
it.
and
I get
stuff,
it.
so
They've got
not
salt and
really
pepper, but
anymore,
I'm saying
right?
is
But yeah,
you
that-
could
your point's true, right?
yeah. We got to get alcohol, to get tobacco, to get firearms, to get
into the
all these,
airport, to get into the courthouse,
all this stuff,
to get into a school.
You've got to show your ID. But we have to show our ID to vote, to validate.
Yeah. Okay.
It's ridiculous.
For sure.
You know?
Cash your paycheck.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
All of it.
All right, Ryan, I already touched on the schools, and probably I didn't want to steal some of your thunder, but well, we talked about it in the DEI stuff. But your last bullet point here, number 7, Kelley's school choice initiative. What's your thoughts on that whole thing? I went to a private school the last 3 years, a private Christian school. You learn something, you lose. You know, it's a mixed bag. It wasn't a bad place, but it was definitely run by people that were a little bit more zealous. And so, you know, if I didn't have my hair cut right, I got demerits. And I'm a little flagrant in my vocal, even back then. And I did cuss and got some demerits. I got a little demerits and kicked off the soccer team. But what's your thoughts on that to finish out your bullet points here on Ryan Kelley's blueprints for Michigan and investing in Michigan families? What's your thoughts?
Which is important, right? Do we invest in Michigan
Well, you got
families?
your family right there, buddy.
That's it, right there.
You know,
there they
right
all
there.
are, for sure. Yeah. So, you know, educational freedom, having people be able to decide where their dollars go.
Okay.
I think that that's an important component to it, that it's not just paid directly into whatever system.
Yeah.
You know, part of the challenge with that is that, okay, now the government's going to go and dictate what all these private institutions want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And I disagree with that, because you can put things in place that don't allow that to happen, right?
Yeah.
You can fund students directly. You give them the money and they can use it on certain things, right? When it comes to schooling for homeschoolers, for example, or if you want to go to one of those private schools or one of those charter schools,
right,
being able to direct your education the way that you see best. That's an important thing, I think, that so many people want. And I know they say, oh, back in 2000, there was a ballot initiative for that, and it ended up failing. Yeah, that's 25 years ago, and a lot has changed in 25 years.
Since the lockdown, you had a huge push for homeschooling. For sure,
right.
Huge push.
And we've seen more and more, going back to the DEI, the things that they're pushing in the schools, right? Create a little bit of level of competition, you know, that's important.
The competition's huge. Show me that you deserve to have my kids come to your school, to your facilities, and get educated better than what I will teach them at home. Otherwise, I'm going to partner up with other family and friends around me, and my cousin's going to come over here and teach them some physics tomorrow, and then my sister's going to teach them, you know, some botany, you know, whatever the case may be, you know. And I honestly think we need to go back to a true either homeschool model or a one room school. Because when you look back at the any documentation you can find about one room schooling, you had everybody, the toddlers all the way up to generally around 16 is when you would school out back then. The older kids helped the younger kids with their studies. So the younger kids were learning, and then the kid above them helped them. And then the kid above them.
Teaching for sure.
Correct. And you learn and you develop a skill of understanding empathy and connection with everybody in the whole place. You didn't have the level of bullying. You didn't have the level of classism. You didn't have these hierarchies. You didn't have all these dynamics. And I looked around at subdivisions and I go, you know what? Just put a one room school in all these subdivisions and put one or two really dynamic, good teachers, which we do have still, that are going to go in there and help from start to finish. These kids all work together to educate themselves with the curriculum you provide. And the curriculum's reading, writing, arithmetic, and you're not doing DEI, you're not doing this other bullshit. And then you can still have these larger group environments to where you can come in and do sports. You can come in and do football. You can come into, because it would no longer be a school necessarily football team. It would be the community football team. Still have the same dynamics. We still have our tribalism. We still have our rah-rahs on there. And we have that. We learned that with, I don't know if your kids are in hockey, but I watched that with the hockey kids, to where, yes, there are schools that have their hockey teams, but the vast majority of the kids that are in hockey are in AAA, AA, single A. You know, there's all these other areas of hockey that they can play in that are separated from the schools that parents are bringing their kids to. They're thriving in it. They're doing all this stuff. And I think about those dynamics when you're talking about school of choice initiatives. Let's just bureaucrat this. Let's take all the bureaucracy out of this. Let's decentralize this whole thing and bring it back to
Local.
what is the local, what is the expression of a family? What if you didn't have the opportunity to send your kids somewhere, what would your family do? What would they do? I guarantee your 6 kids would be around a table helping each other.
We homeschool, so we do all that.
So you already do that.
We do
so
it.
you know it. So that's the dynamic that I see, where kids don't have to deal with those. I one thing I really hate in there, obviously the DEI programming and the all the other bullshit beyond just teaching them information. I can't stand when I'm sitting down with Jocelyn. She's 17. The last couple of years, she's struggled immensely with algebra. Couldn't get it. Hated it. My daughter, Nicole, also. She's now 30 or 29. She struggled with it, right? Then Jocelyn tells me a couple weeks ago, she's like, I love doing statistical work. I love looking at statistics and working through. I'm like, so these people didn't know how to understand that you hate it, that algebra was dumb because it's tied to geometry. It's tied to all these, equations, and didn't shift you immediately over into statistical analysis and see that was something that you were geared towards. It wasn't that she struggled with math. It was the math that they imposed upon them that was not geared towards her aptitude. And these are the type of things where we don't tap into the creativity of our children to make them the best and find their skill sets, find their best and push them forward. That bothers me. And I see that in your just school of choice there would do that. Send them to what's Cheryl Stockwell. What's the Stockwell one? There's a whole bunch of really good academies out there.
There is.
And there's a lot of good private schools out there. And they all have their flaws. They all have their drawbacks. So you get to make a choice. Choice initiative. I love it. Ryan, final thoughts. It's been a pleasure sitting with you tonight, even through the tornado that came through.
That was fun.
The storms.
We did it. We made it.
Yeah,
We lost
thanks
power.
for finally coming out. I've been nagging them for how long?
3 years.
Dude, 3 years. That's
Has it been that
amazing.
long? Yeah.
Persistence pays off. Man.
Yeah.
I'm amazed because there's my biggest advocate over here, even though I beat up on him verbally, not physically.
After
I don't want to abuse elderly people.
after the race, though, I told you it wasn't going to be for a while. Though.
Yeah,
so
you
it
did.
technically wasn't 3 years of me pushing it off. I pushed it off for a long time there to get past all of that.
I guarantee you,
stuff.
Larry,
Yeah,
started.
you needed to get past everything, and it's like
Uh,
now is a good time to talk about it, and you got to see the man cave studio.
It's great.
Then the storm interrupted, so now
Yeah.
you've got 2 links.
Well, we've
Check
refreshed
it
this.
out.
Let me catch up on chat, and then I want to hear. Larry, did you want to give a final thought before Ryan, or do you want to just let Ryan give a final?
Just let him give his final.
Okay. This has been a great conversation. I love it. Let me check this. Ryan Kelley, this is from Curtis Saber 2004. Ryan Kelley was front runner in the race next to Garrett. That is why Ryan Kelley got the patriotic approval endorsement. You got the
That's true.
Patriot approval endorsement?
Yeah, Patriot approved. Yeah.
That's,
'Cause Curtis said that.
Yeah, Curtis said that.
Hey, Curtis. Yeah.
Tudor Dixon lost when she stated no abortion, no exception. Yeah. I'm a full 100% anti-abortionist personally, but I'll tell you this: all you have to do is take away their money. You want to kill babies? You got clients that want to take their life? Fine, that's great. You're not getting state and federal money.
Yeah.
And we're going to investigate you to see if you're sending aborted fetal tissue to Pepsi and Doritos to do flavorings. How about that? I'm against abortion 100%. But the minute Tudor Dixon said absolutely, well, there was a lot of other flaws, but I agree with you that was one of it. Let's see, 100% funding to whoever parents choose to educate their children, little or few exceptions. Yeah, 100%. You want to homeschool your kids? Your property taxes should not go a single anywhere. You should keep your money if you're homeschooling your kids. My parents had to spend extra money beyond their taxes to send me to a private school for the last 3 years of my high school. Why? That was back in 91 or 89, 90, 91. Why? This is should be your choice to send your kids. And the fact that they tie it in and they use it as leverage over you, extort you for it, it's bullshit.
Well, that's just another example of government being in the way.
100%.
That's what it is.
Yeah. John Bovey says that Stockwell is run by libtards. Okay. All right, buddy. Livingston Classical is the best near. You know what? My wife actually helped with Livingston Classical Academy over there for a couple of years. She was part of the she did the gym. I don't want to say the gym. I didn't want to say the gym. He's washing a dish down. She helped with the exercise, everything like that. She did the kickball with the kids, and she did that. Sure. She's a certified master trainer, so she was there with them. Do we change the crawl to Sunday for conversations? Tim says he changed the crawl. Oh, you know what? Didn't we change the crawl, Larry?
I changed it. Yeah, we changed the crawl.
It says it's on Tuesday. Yeah. Okay. Stop yelling. Anyway, so there's catch up on chat. Ryan, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you tonight. Aside from the tornadoes, we did our time. What's your final thoughts, my friend? And I didn't say this before the beginning of the show. I always have everybody sign my my official paper here.
All right,
so pick a color. Oh shit!
I get any choice. Pick one.
Anyone pick a color.
We're gonna do it in red.
Do it.
Right? GOP red.
Yeah, GOP red.
GOP red.
All right, it's on the overhead. Give me that shot.
All right, you got it there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anywhere is good on here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your official. It comes from me watching that movie, The Perfect Storm.
Yeah.
And they come back with a little teeny swordfish, nothing much. And they're like, you didn't even, break even on your stuff. He's like, sign my ledger. It's that idea of like, you know what? No matter whatever, you sign my ledger. But I like what also ties back to the Declaration of Independence. The John Hancock. It's like, sign my paper. That in fact, Ryan, that top stack in there in the
right below the TV next to the Trump flag.
Yeah, right.
That stack.
That's our shows. Each piece of paper is an episode.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So I love it. It's a record, it's a physical record.
I'm going on what, 3 years?
Are you?
2 years. 3 years.
No, you've been here quite a while, Larry. I've allowed it for a long time. Oh, look at Ryan. He's graffitiing that up. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that. I'm impressed.
Dude. Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Larry, sign while he's giving his final thoughts. So I got you. Sign it. You can't sign red. Thanks, buddy. Ryan, final
red,
thoughts.
white, and blue.
You're on the show. We had some good dinner. We had some great conversation, dude.
It was all good.
I was so
We're
upset
rocking it.
when the storm came through and every power went out and I had to because you went on this rant.
It was a good one. We couldn't recreate it.
Well,
We tried. We
No.
didn't.
I have it recorded. I recorded it in the system.
Yeah.
It's
So
in
I may
there,
pull
yeah.
some excerpts out of that
There you go.
and get that going. But
Maybe get some
give me
good
your final
TikToks.
thoughts, my good friend, and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, we covered a lot tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to chat and enjoy the dinner and everything. And I think, our state right now is it's hurting
Okay.
in a lot of ways. Our country is hurting in a lot of ways. We see the president aiming to do a lot of good things. Talk just like with immigration, and you see so many of the liberal judges trying to shut them down, stop them from wanting to stand up for our country. And we won't get into all of that, but just
Right.
the place we're at as a country and a state. We need some real leadership. And I'm not saying I'm running for anything. I don't know if it's the right thing for me to do right now. Honestly, I have a lot of soul searching to do on that, and I got a family to think about. So
Right.
the Kelley Blueprint for Michigan is not an announcement for anything. It's great ideas for our state, and we need to see the Michigan Department of Government Efficiency happen. But I hope the voters have a choice. Whether ultimately God pulls me in that direction as me or if it's somebody else, I hope we have a choice of somebody who will actually be a change agent versus somebody that's actually perpetuating the same corruption that we've seen.
How important in that is the transparency for you? I'm being rhetorical, but I'm provoking you to answer that. The transparency dynamic is being a change agent, being all that. Trump is being overboard. President Trump being overboard on explaining what they're doing, showing what they're doing, having the people that are operating coming out and giving press conferences on what they're doing. How much more, I guess that's my question, how much more is teeing off your final thoughts to continue it?
It's super important that we have somebody that can earnestly communicate what's happening. Go there to make the changes and be able to play by play. Here's what we're doing. Just like you're sitting down at a cigar bar talking to somebody, being able to talk to the camera that same way and be able to have the courage to do those things, to draw the line in the sand and say, well, we're not going to do the vaccine thing, right?
Yeah.
As an example, that's kind of behind us a little bit, but to those same things, that's super important. Much beyond me for all of us, right? I mean, we're seeing our money squandered away and our rights being eroded, and Trump won because people trusted that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. People are like, oh, we didn't vote for Doge, but you did actually, right?
You did, because he ran on it and he said, we're going to make the government accountable. We're going to expose the corruption.
Elon campaigned with him. People did vote for this. As much
100%.
as they, we didn't vote for this. We did actually. And he won. He won by a long shot.
He got a push from Elon. He got a push from Tulsi. He got a push from RFK Jr.
Right.
He got a push from all the people that came along with him and said, we believe this man will implement the things that we're doing. He wasn't focused on health the way that RFK was. He wasn't focused on government efficiency the way that Elon is. He wasn't focused on some of the dynamics of statecraft that Tulsi is, and all the way across all the offices, and that's what he's always needed. And he had a bunch of neocons and a bunch of deep staters before, and he was, the one I'm concerned with is the insider in the White House. But
so
we'll see.
We need more of that. We need more change that's going to put prosperity to the people more so than the government.
100%.
Right? I mean, you want the government to be successful. Absolutely you do, right? There is a need for government, right? A limited government. Small government, right? It serves a purpose. It absolutely does, right?
The least amount of government for the greatest amount of
prosperity for the people, right?
Yeah.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So, whatever that looks like, in plans for God to have for our future, I hope that's what we can see. I hope we see for the January 6ers, additional things that will correct the wrongs of the past.
Yeah.
Accountability, I probably could go on and on. We've talked about it all, so I'm not going to continue. It
was a great conversation, Ryan. Yeah. I had so much fun tonight. Two things. When you're in town again, hit me up. Make sure we got numbers. You got Larry's number, but he doesn't always communicate with me the way he should.
I'll bring a tornado with me when I come.
Well, I'm just, you know what? I'm a social butterfly too. So, dude, I would love. You're gonna have to educate me on the latest cigars flavors, because I told you some of my flavors that I like. Cherry Cavendish, or I used to smoke those DeJarm cigarettes, which were they were, what was that? Clove cigarettes. Yeah. God, I loved them. They tingle on your lips. They were great. So I'm into those flavorings, stuff like that. I would love to go to a cigar bar with you and just hang out with a whole group of people and have and just have conversations like this. The only disappointment I have in those situations is that we don't have a camera on them, and we don't have somebody signing off saying, "Yeah, I want to," because these are the same conversations.
And sometimes it's good to have them off camera, because sometimes people think that it's fake when you're on camera.
They keep trying to do these hot mic things and expose Trump and other people. And I'm like, they're saying the same thing
on and off camera.
They might have a little bit more flowery language. I love JD. JD's so raw and stuff like that. He's like, fuck those people. I get it. But I appreciate that. So that's the first thing is next time you're around, you're over Grand Rapids, next time you head over here, hit me up, make sure if I'm available, I'd love to go to a cigar bar or come here. I love my bar, of course. So come here to the man cave and I'd love to do that, but we're going to have you back on the show. Larry's going to pester you until you get back over here.
3 more years, Larry.
Yeah. But, my second thing is lost now. I was like,
I've done that a couple
Well,
times.
you know
Yeah.
what? Next time we have a man cave party, I'm going to invite you to bring
There you
your
go.
wife.
Oh yeah, dude.
And you know what?
Well, and
And you-
depending on the party,
Yeah. Bring
if
the
it's not a
kids, too.
straight political party,
Yeah.
Mike, you saw my grandkids behind you. I was like, Dean, can you tell them they were down there just doing what they normally do here? And I'm like, guys,
You got to hear his band.
I can hear you in the
You
background.
got to
Kids
hear
would
him do
love to play the
strangle. You got to
band.
hear him. You got to hear him do Stranglehold by Ted Nugent.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loves that. Oh, that's what it was. Second thing, Ryan, we're the end of March. We're going into April now, 2024. The next gubernatorial race is in 2026. I think one person has announced.
One
Nesbitt.
Yeah.
Nesbitt,
Uh,
is it?
Yeah.
You would have to take it under advisement, talk to the Lord, talk to your wife, talk to your family. I think you have a strong platform. Not just what we read tonight. Your aspirations for the future. There's 7 bullet points there you have on X. But also you have a strong mandate knowing that President Trump pardoned you along with 1,500 plus other J6ers falsely accused and politically prosecuted. That is a pretty big badge of honor. None of the other candidates that ran against you in 2022 have that.
No.
Nobody else has gone. Nobody else has got. And you rightly pointed out who has been arrested while they were running for political office. You and Trump. That's a huge thing. So, how long do we? I guess my rhetorical question: how long do we got to wait until you make that final decision? We've got we've got a little over a year and a half, little over. But really, to get into primaries and to deal with that, we don't really have a year and a half. We pretty much got about a year. By the time you really have to ramp things up. You were one of the first ones to announce, or you were the first one in 2022 to announce. I won't put you on the spot to say what are your thoughts, but it seems like you're considering it, and probably that's a prayerful thing and a family thing. But is that a possibility? That was one of the questions in the future. Do you think there's a possibility that you might run again?
50-50 chance.
50-50.
Either I do or I don't.
Okay. I mean, I want to put you.
Does that guy in
It's
That's-
always a
Novi,
50-50
does the
chance.
guy in Novi still have that gigantic
flip of a
Ryan
coin.
Kelley flag?
He does, yeah. That
Yeah.
could go back up pretty quick.
But you endeared yourself to a lot of people, and rightfully so, because you're genuine. And that's not to say that some of the other candidates aren't genuine, but you were forefront, you were genuine, and you were not phoning it in. You were going grassroots. And I've seen every time somebody goes grassroots, every time, whether they win or lose, they endure the hearts of the people. They engender that appreciation and that love and affection from people that you can't get any other
Can't
way.
buy it.
No,
You can't buy it. You can't buy loyalty, right?
No.
Loyalty just is or it isn't.
Yeah.
And you can buy tasks, but sometimes you buy those tasks and you don't get your signatures and you end up getting kicked off the ballot, right?
right.
I have real connection with people.
Yeah.
If I were to make a decision to run again, I could activate a majority of those same people and
Yeah.
a whole bunch more that would very easily help me get the signatures that I needed, right? That you could check that box. I've been there, done it.
Yep.
I've been there, done it. And I'm battle tested in so many different ways. I've been through a lot. I paid a higher price than any of the candidates that ran last time. I've paid a higher price than anyone in our state
Right.
in regard to political office.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have the text message or the transcripts to prove it.
Yeah.
The federal government put me in prison because of those reasons, because I misused my platform for a candidate of elected office,
Yeah.
right? I misused my platform. Freedom of speech thrown out the window, right? I've been through all of that. That's the real story. I don't got to make it up. I don't have to fabricate it. I don't have to make it bigger or smaller than what it really is. It's in writing.
Right. It's right there.
And so whether I announce now or later, I have all that controversy that comes along with it. Plus, the people don't care about January 6th. Trump got elected by a landslide, including the
Right.
popular vote. They don't care about January 6th. And if the media wants to sit down and talk to me about that story and dive into the details, I know the right questions to ask if they're going to go, we don't want to talk about January 6th with you anymore. Oh, really?
Right.
So,
it's like Tucker getting fired from Fox when he was about to expose a whole bunch of the videos.
for sure.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it because it'll prove them wrong.
It's an easy obstacle to overcome. Another one of those guys. Oh, that one didn't die when I hit him. That had to have hurt.
Dude, you're even more militant on those fuckers than I am.
So let's just see what happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens. Let's see what Sam called. I don't know that it's the right thing for me to do. Last time, it was, and maybe it's not this time, but maybe it is. And if I can serve in that capacity, I will. Mm-hmm. But if not, that's fine too.
Well, and I'll finish with my final thought on that. That's a dynamic that we don't always calculate, is that sometimes running for office isn't the ultimate goal to win.
Right.
Running for office or doing something similar to that, being put on the national, let's put it in that category. Sometimes being put on the national stage isn't to achieve the goal that you went for to be on the national stage. Sometimes you go on the national stage just because you were obedient to do it.
Right.
But then that affords you then the opportunities that come next.
That's a story.
It is.
Right?
It's Moses being the prince, but then he takes the life of somebody abusing an Israelite, and then he's gone for 40 years and he learns. And then he comes back and he's put on the national stage. But what was the purpose?
Right.
What's the purpose for that? And there's some times where you don't necessarily run again. Sometimes you do. That's a decision. We'll wait to see if you do. And I hope you give us the first. We're first to know. But the point being is that sometimes the running itself puts you on a national stage to give you the platform then to make other changes and have other influences that are beyond what you could do politically. Right. Because no matter how righteous, no matter how much integrity you have, no matter how much you can't be compromised, you're still hamstrung by that. Look at, we talked about Trump. He really doesn't have 4 years. If he maintains Congress and the Senate, he would have 4 years, but really he's got 2. But either way, all of these executive orders have to be translated into true legislation that he can then sign on. Right now they're just executive orders. The courts are challenging. Let the courts, they made their decision. Let's see them enforce it. Type of dynamic Jacksonian divide. But I look at these dynamics and I go, sometimes running, if you're genuinely running, then you can turn that into a platform no matter what, to be a voice for the people. And that's ultimately what we all need. We need people that step up and be a voice. You represent your wife and your children when you step out personally. You represent whoever your constituency, if you were to be elected, when you step out publicly. Those are dynamics that we've got to get back to in our country. The reason they didn't look at women to vote initially, and there were some exceptions, in this country is because they expected the children and the wife to go to the husband and express their opinions. And we see that in Abigail Washington. We see that in Thomas Jefferson. We see that specifically in John Adams. We see that in a lot of the other founding fathers where they were there's a lot of communications with their wives and their children that they received, that they took into account, that they did that. And then they would go into the assembly of the leaders of that community. And then they would appoint somebody from that community to represent them. We've got to get back to representative government starting in the home and then coming out from the home and being duplicated. Okay, I represent my wife and children. This is what we talked about. Okay, now all the men that gathered and talked about that, we represent this small area. Now we're going to send you as a representative to represent us. That's the dynamic of a representative republic that we've got to get back to. And Ryan, you exemplify that. And I thank you for coming on the show tonight and sharing everything. I'm being reminded in the chat. You guys want to support the show? Go to thealexjonesstore.com/this is my brain. This is my brain /this is my brain. The Alex Jones Store. Yes, we're connected with Alex Jones. We're one of his affiliate. It's an affiliate program. But I've been using his products for the last 8 years or more. I love them. Go on there. There's turmeric. There's Brain Force. There's I take the nitric boost, the turmeric, bodies. That's the turmeric. There's a whole bunch. Vince just ordered a whole bunch of stuff. The Turbo Force is back in stock. That's phenomenal. It's a natural caffeine release over 8 to 10 hours, depending on your metabolism. There's so many other stuff. They've been pushing a whole bunch of other stuff. Just go on the website, but type in that address. This is the alexjonesstore.com/this is my brain. We get a small percentage of that if you do that and check it out. Ryan, what's the best place on your X account? Is that the best place to find you?
Yeah, for sure.
What's your Ryan D. Kelley on X? I left it. I left the X. I closed it out.
So pop right back up. Right there.
Ryan D. Kelley.
Number one.
Number one. You guys want to go?
My name, you can find that
Ryan D.
easy.
Kelley. You guys want to go find that? It's on the screen behind me. I'll hit it once on the wall feed. Ryan D. Kelley. You want to follow Ryan because he's posting stuff like this. Kelly's Blueprint for Michigan. He's posting other stuff. He's showing his opinions. He's talking about this. Look, Doge is very unpopular with those who benefiting from corruption and fraud, plus the handful of idiots that can't think for themselves or are paid to make a scene and be violent. The other 90% wholeheartedly support Doge and want it to continue and spread to every state. Hashtag Michigan Doge. So these are the type of things that you're posting. We need to like and follow all of your stuff. I did it. I didn't realize I wasn't following you already because I try to follow everybody. So I apologize, Ryan.
It's all good.
Yeah. So there you are with that. Appreciate you so much coming on the show. Make sure I switch back before I do that. Dude. Yeah, you need to. I'm not saying that I'll like tear it down the way you did. You took that cigar down, but bring me a cigar next time. And it was a pleasure, my friend, having you here.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Dude, it was a great conversation. And Larry didn't interrupt that much, so it was even better.
Good job, Larry.
Okay, he's out there posting. No, it was great, Larry. You did a good job. So guys, like, share, and subscribe. Do all that stuff. Hit the thumbs up button. Go to the Alex Jones Store. .com/this is my brain. Find something on there. It helps support the show. We're trying to do our best here to just get some you know what I like? I just like this. I like having the conversations. So we will see you guys on Tuesday for a rousing show. Next week on the show, Shane Trejo, Dennis Marburger will be in. We'll be talking about historical effects. I'm sure we'll be going over the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and doing a whole bunch of stuff.
And the Knoll brothers in a couple weeks.
The Knoll
right?
brothers in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
They're scheduled to be on. I don't know if we're going to have a couple people also chiming in for that. And then we'll get Ryan back sooner rather than later because this is a great conversation.
Tornado.
And we survived the tornado. Thank you guys for checking back in after the initial feed went down. And we will see you guys next time.